loves to chat and go on and on about whatever new interest he had. Simon was the type of person who would get excited about a new hobby or job. He would learn everything he could, buy all the tools, read many books, and even attend conventions. But after a year, he would often lose interest and move on to something new, starting the whole process over again. His garage was filled with expensive equipment for making music, flying remote-controlled planes, fishing gear, and podcasting gear. None of it had been used since he and his wife Polly moved in a few years ago. When he was really into something, he would talk about it constantly and spend hours sharing details about his latest passion. Polly had learned to respond with, "Yes, dear," and "Really, dear?" a lot while trying to avoid seeing the receipts when he came home with new items for his current interest. Polly was very patient, but she loved Simon deeply, and we all loved her for that. I had known them since they got married, and I had known Simon from college. We both moved to Chicago and settled in Crystal Lake, a cozy suburb just north and west of the city. It was a nice little place, not too far from Chicago, but just far enough to have its own character. I thought we were happy there. Anyway, Simon called me and said, "Oh, wait, I should introduce myself. I'm Ryan Tomlinson. I live in Crystal Lake with my wife, Deanna, or at least I did. We'll see how that goes. I work for a company that makes cabinets. The company, Dresden Furniture, has two main parts. One side makes high-end office furniture, while the other does custom installations. We create fancy office furniture with wood and leather, as well as build special offices and rooms for homes. The top 10% of clients use us to create libraries, entertainment rooms, and unique spaces. For example, we designed a bar in Milwaukee with a hidden wall of books that opened up to the main bar when the right book was chosen. What was clever about it was that the bar staff could change the trigger book every day, making it a fun surprise for customers. So, yeah, I'm involved in that. Well, I don't actually build it, I'm more of a salesperson. To be honest, I'm not even doing that most of the time. I manage 3 employees who handle sales for us. I used to do it myself, but our business has thrived even with the tough economy. Now, I have a team and don't have to travel as much. Occasionally, I still travel for some important clients, and it's usually worth it. But I'm glad my days of traveling every week are behind me. At 39, I appreciate being home every evening to see my kids when they come back from school. My wife Deanna and I have 3 children. Our oldest is Paula, who is 12. Next is Saffron, who is 10. I ended up losing a bet about a TV show, but that's a funny story for another time. Lastly, we have our son Jamie, who is 8. These kids bring so much joy to my life. Jamie is adopted because Deanna had some challenges when giving birth to Saffron and can't have more children. We decided to adopt Jamie, and he is just as loved as our biological kids. I've learned that love isn't just about biology. Deanna and I met in a bar in Chicago, which isn't usually a great place to find your future spouse, but it worked out for us. It was a nightclub called the Crowbar. We sometimes visit it now, but that lifestyle feels far behind us. When we first met, Deanna was dressed in a goth style while I was in a gladiator costume. It was Halloween, and I'll always remember her wonderful Elvira costume from that night. She can still wear it, too. She wore it again a year ago for fun. Deanna is slender and always looks great, though her style is understated. She doesn't go for flashy outfits or anything too revealing. She's not boring, she just prefers a subtle approach. The only time she goes all out with her look is at costume parties, where she enjoys dressing up and can express a different part of herself. She really enjoys these parties, and it's nice to see her let loose. Deanna is beautiful with long brown hair, hazel eyes, and a lovely smile that can brighten up a room. When she's unhappy, her expression changes, but she lights up when she's happy. Her eyes sparkle with kindness, and she has a great sense of humor. Her jokes often make me laugh, even if they might be missed by others. I love that we share our own little inside jokes. She is 5'6", 38 years old, and maintains her fitness by walking in the winter and swimming in the summer at the local YMCA. So when we met, things went well. I got her number, and the usual happened. I won't go into too many details because honestly our story is quite similar to many others out there. We dated, had our ups and downs, and then we became a couple. We moved in together, and everything seemed fine. I proposed, and we got married. The wedding went well, and the honeymoon was even better. You've heard this story before. Even with kids coming along fairly quickly, we were happy. At least, I thought we were. I know I was happy, and I'm pretty sure Deanna was too. I still can't figure out what went wrong. Maybe I was just not paying close enough attention, but I didn't notice the signs. Our routines didn't change much, and while it became harder to find time for intimacy as we got older, that's just part of having kids. Every couple with a family faces similar challenges. When we did find the time, our connection was strong. We enjoyed our moments together and tried new things. I was curious about some things, but it wasn't a big deal for me. I know some guys focus too much on those concerns, but that's not how I viewed our relationship. I was content overall. In terms of intimacy, we had our moments, especially when we were really in the mood. It would happen during special times like birthdays or anniversaries. I didn't think much of it. I was satisfied compared to some of my friends, at least based on our conversations. We did try some playful activities like dressing up, but we often ended up laughing and couldn't take it seriously. It was just fun for us. The frequency wasn't always high, but when we were together, it was meaningful. I'd say quality mattered more than quantity. I enjoyed those moments, but like many men, I sometimes wished for more. At least that's what Deanna would say. But really, isn't every parent feeling similar pressures? Having kids can be exhausting. Combine that with a busy work week and all the little things of everyday life, and there just wasn't enough time for what we wanted. We had to think about making sure the insurance was paid, getting dinner ready, helping Paula with her homework, doing the laundry, and finishing up Jamie's potty training, along with all the other responsibilities that come with having kids. I figured that was just how life was, so I shrugged it off and tried to make the best of it. And it was nice. I loved our life together. It wasn't perfect, but it made me happy. There was one thing that sometimes made me stop and think, but I'll hold off on that for now. It's part of the story. Oh, me? What do I look like? I always wonder why anyone cares in stories like this. Still, I want everyone to know I'm not some weird character. I could look like Brad Pitt if we were to imagine that. I'd definitely be the older one, though. Yes, I can say I'm fit and look good. Okay, maybe not that fit. All right, I'll be honest. I'm a bit out of shape. I'm 6 feet tall and weigh 210 pounds. I don't have man boobs, just so you know. But if I'm being truthful, I could stand to lose some weight. A lot of pizza will do that to a person. Yeah, pizza is my weakness. I really enjoy it. And who can eat pizza without a beer, right? I've come to realize that I need to take action about the extra weight, especially when my kids cling to me and it feels like too much. So I decided to join a cycling club. Simon was joining too, just starting his new hobby. He thought he might even win next year's Tour de France. Good luck with that. I just want to enjoy the ride. I mean, I don't understand how some athletes win while using performance enhancers. When I try something like that, I can't stop laughing. I think they should get credit just for being able to handle it. Okay, maybe that's not the best joke. Welcome to my life. I'm not sure why I'm sharing all this. It might not be that important to the story, but here we are. So here's the thing. I was in Madison, Wisconsin for a job. Wait, I haven't told you what Deanna does for a living yet, have I? That's actually important. To begin with, Deanna was a stay-at-home mom. When we first got together, she was studying interior design in college, but even though she got her degree, she never used it. We got married, and with kids on the way, she wanted to fully enjoy being a mom while I was doing well as a salesman, so she decided to stay at home. She kept busy until Jamie started first grade, and after that, her days were free again. So she teamed up with a mutual friend, Crystal Rigg, who is married to Charlie Rigg, a well-known radio host in Chicago. I knew Charlie from college, and we still catch up now and then. Crystal works in real estate and needed someone to help stage homes for sale. They would walk through a house together, deciding how to move the furniture, what to take away, and what to bring in from a small storage unit we rented. Their goal was to show the house in a way that made it feel welcoming while keeping it neat and organized. Deanna had done a great job making our house feel like home. She spent little money but found a lot of wonderful furniture, artwork to hang on the walls, and other decorations. I don't really know what to call these items, but Deanna always found ways to use them. It was common for her to change things around regularly. Every couple of weeks, something would be different, and new items would appear, while others were tucked away. Our house was always changing, and over time we ended up with so many things that were no longer needed. Deanna didn't want to give them up, so we rented a storage unit, which eventually filled up. Sometimes things didn't go well, like the time I came home to find the picture above our bed. A nice photo from our honeymoon in Jamaica had been replaced by a strange picture of a French clown with a bottle of champagne. I didn't like that change at all. Deanna sometimes needed a little guidance to avoid mistakes, but overall she had a good eye for design. It made sense that she wanted to use her talents and all the things we had collected over the years. I say we, but honestly, I rarely noticed what changed until I came home and realized something felt different. It often led to me asking, "Did you change your hair, dear? Something seems different." And then I would get a look of narrowed brows and pursed lips. Deanna and Crystal worked well together, taking on projects in both the suburbs and the city. They often spent long hours together, especially on weekends when Crystal had open houses. They would stay in touch by phone, and sometimes I would surprise them with coffee when I passed by where they were working. Both of them easily attracted attention, and Crystal had a special way of communicating with people that felt personal, yet respectful. She could have deep conversations without crossing any boundaries, making it easy to talk with her about anything. She felt like a friend who really understood you. It's strange when I think about it now. I have no clue why I, along with everyone else, thought that, but that was just how she seemed. Looking back, considering what I later learned, it seems she probably did flirt a bit, but it was only with others. I guess I had a very limited view of her. Oh, and she had blonde hair. She was very fit. I used to joke that if they added a redhead to their group, I could call them and give them tasks for fighting crime. I tried to come up with a fun name for their little team, something like Power Squad, or something less obvious, but I never quite got it right. People often gave me funny looks. Now let me share some background. There's me, Ryan, my wife Deanna, and our friend Simon. I work in sales, and Deanna helps with staging houses and apartments. We have kids and are handling the everyday stuff, I think. So, there I was in Madison. You want to know why I was there? That's the big question. I was meeting with a client at the University of Wisconsin about his home. He wanted a traditional library with 2 levels and a rolling ladder. Being a well-known professor, he wanted everything to be perfect, so he reached out to our company and insisted I come. He had heard great things from another satisfied customer, a video game company owner in Madison. We had done an impressive job turning his basement into an office, which he humorously referred to as his murder room. Somehow, that led to our professor reaching out to us. My boss took the call, and off I went to Wisconsin. Speaking of my boss, let me introduce you to Paul. Paul Dresden. What should I say about him? He's a good guy. He took over the company from his father, who passed away about 8 years ago. Paul cares deeply about the company and his team. He's nice and well-meaning, but let's just say he can be a bit clueless. Despite his lack of competence, he runs the company well. He believes he does. I actually make things happen. Paul tells me what he wants to do, and I figure out how to make it work. He's so forgetful that he often doesn't recall what he asked me to do last week and doesn't even check in to see if it's done. Even so, we like Paul. It's not out of disrespect or anything like that. We're genuinely fond of him. We are really trying hard to keep the company running so we all have jobs to come to each morning and to support Paul. Honestly, if he wasn't in his corner office enjoying fancy coffee and being lightly overlooked by his assistant, he might be out there making some clueless mistakes. We keep this company going because we enjoy our work and appreciate Paul, even if we don't always follow his ideas. For example, 3 weeks ago, Paul had the bright idea to enter the IKEA market. His plan was to create a showroom to compete with IKEA. We all know that no one else was really doing that. Instead of explaining how IKEA got to where it is and how they benefit from support in other countries, something Paul might never understand, I simply said, "Sure, Paul, great idea. I can't believe no one has thought of this before." Then I left him some details about a couple of warehouses and never heard anything more. A week later, he suggested making portable desks for the military so they could easily carry them. "Sure, Paul, I'll get right on that. I know it sounds unkind that I ignored him like that, but you have to understand. Paul is like that well-meaning friend who doesn't quite get things but needs to be treated normally. He cared a lot about his team. We even got vitamins every morning. He was genuinely a nice person. Out of respect for him and in memory of his very sharp father, we all try to keep things together. It's not because we think he's foolish. It's because we care about him." One more thing about Paul. He always looked fantastic. While he may not have the sharpest mind, he certainly had the look of a respected leader. We made sure to show him off whenever we could any interviews. He was right there. We did have to watch what he said to avoid awkward situations, but he helped us attract more clients. That's probably all you need to know. Maybe even too much, honestly. I might not bring up Paul again, but I find him interesting. I can't quite figure out how he manages to put on his shoes each morning, yet he shows up for work like clockwork, ready to take on the world, one desk at a time. So I was in Madison, staying in a nice hotel just off the main square. It was May, and they were having a concert in the square near the Capitol building. The weather was warm, and many people filled the area, sitting on the grass and enjoying the music played by a live orchestra. Then I received a text from Simon. It was simple. Watching the game? This was odd. I don't usually pay attention to sports. I follow the Blackhawks a bit. I know some players, but that's about it. In fact, I'm known for being against organized sports. I've talked about how professional athletes can be very self-centered. Simon knows this well since he has heard me say it many times. So I replied, "When have you ever known me to follow games? What game are you talking about?" After a short wait, I got another message. The Cubs-Sox Crosstown Classic. It's today. He was mentioning the game between the Chicago Cubs and the White Sox, who play in different parts of the city. The Cubs are from the north side, playing at Wrigley Field, while the White Sox are from the south side at Comiskey Park. Once a year, they face off in a special game. There was supposed to be a rivalry, but honestly, fans seemed pretty indifferent about the other team, both having plenty of disappointment in their seasons. I texted back, "No, not watching. I couldn't care less, and you wouldn't either." I chuckled, knowing the double negatives would confuse him for a moment. Almost right away, I got a reply. "Dude, get to a bar and watch it. I can't say much more than that." That caught my interest. Something was happening, and I love a good mystery. Just ask anyone who has come to dinner at my place, where we often end up playing murder mystery games. Our guests always enjoy themselves, contrary to what Deanna says about people being bored. With nothing else planned for that moment, and one more day of work left measuring at Professor Talker's house, I decided, why not? I turned on the TV in my room, and soon enough, I was lost in the game. At the bottom of the sixth inning, the Sox were leading 7-3. Between the plays, the cameras moved around the crowd. The cameramen often capture moments like couples sharing a kiss or special moments, which are then shown on the big screens in the stadium, much to the surprise of those on camera. Sometimes, they even catch wedding proposals. Sometimes, after someone sees a couple sharing a kiss, they might come back later to try to catch them again. I think we've all seen that happen. They must have done this before because they returned to a couple who clearly cared for each other. They were sitting close together in the lower bleachers. They had good seats, probably season tickets. They were talking excitedly, leaning into each other and sharing glances like couples do when they like each other. The cameraman noticed them, and soon their image appeared on the big screen in the stadium. At first, they didn't notice, but then someone sitting nearby nudged them and pointed to the screen. You could see the moment they looked up. On the screen, the words, "Kiss Cam, share a kiss," flashed. The couple exchanged looks, shrugged, and leaned in for a kiss. It was a big one, too intense and passionate. You could tell they were very close, and they didn't seem shy about it. But I didn't feel happy watching them. That was because the woman in the couple was my wife, Deanna. I recognized her immediately. She was wearing a jacket I had bought for her in a boutique in New York 3 years ago. The boutique was owned by actress Phoebe Cates, who often helped customers herself. I had a bit of a crush on Phoebe Cates, so I convinced Deanna to visit while we were in town. When Deanna figured out I wanted her to buy something special, she picked out the most expensive jacket and insisted I buy it for her. It was worth it, knowing that Phoebe Cates had asked for my address and phone number. I just sat there, watching in shock, feeling as if my world was falling apart. It's strange how my mind works in moments like this. It jumps ahead to imagine what will go wrong, worrying about things that might never happen because they're unlikely. My first thought was about Saffron, our daughter. Who will take her to her karate class on Wednesday if we get divorced? I know it's a silly thought, but I guess it's a way to protect myself from feeling too much. Next, I called Simon. He picked up on the third ring. "Hey," he said, sounding hesitant. "I'm watching," I replied. There was a pause as Simon thought about what to say next. "I'm sorry, man. I thought you should know," he said. "Yeah, I guess. They really seem to care about each other, don't they?" I responded. Yeah, Simon said simply. We spent a few more moments just listening to each other breathe. I could hear the game on his TV in the background, echoing with the one in front of me. It was strange because his was slightly behind mine, making it sound like an echo. I thought about how his TV could be behind mine if he was closer to the actual game. Shouldn't it be the other way around? My mind started wandering. They were on earlier. That's why I texted you. The kiss cam caught them together. He even had a hand under her jacket. That's why the cameraman went back to them, Simon said after a moment. Wow, I replied. You think this is the first time? It doesn't seem like it, does it? It looks like they know each other well. Yeah, I thought so too. The kiss cam moved on and the game continued. Surely she knows I'll see this, right? I think she's a little distracted, and a lot of what they show on the big screen is seen only in the stadium. With you and your friends, she probably feels safe about it. He had a point. Most of my friends were more into using their brains than sports. Okay, maybe I was exaggerating. Most of them just didn't care much about sports. Thinking back, that was a bit odd. I think they're lost in the moment, and she's probably worried you'll see it and that someone she knows will too. That sounded more accurate. Probably. Good thing you were watching. I'm at Tommy's house. That explained a lot. Tommy was Simon's brother-in-law and a huge baseball fan. We didn't get along well because he made a rude comment at a barbecue once, and I almost lost my temper. It was better if we didn't see each other. We sat in silence as we watched the White Sox strike out, and the batter walked back to the dugout. What are you going to do? Do? Nothing for now. I need more information. Yeah. More silence followed as the game went to a commercial break. I noticed the commercials were different for him than for me, probably because of where we lived. So, I'm not sure what else to say. Are you going to be okay? No, but there's nothing you can do from there, Simon. I'm going to go drink, sleep poorly, and figure out a plan, in that order. Sounds like a plan. Just don't do anything reckless, okay? I don't want to have to come get you. Just be careful. Yeah, well, I'm 300 miles away. She'll be home by the time I get back. Like I said, I need more information. Okay, well, be safe. Call me when you get back. I will, Simon. Thanks. Overall, it was a pretty ordinary conversation for such a heavy topic. It felt a bit scattered. I was overwhelmed when I think about it now. I wanted to know everything instead of just reacting. I think part of me was in shock, and part of it was just how I am. I like to understand things before I show my feelings. At college, I got known for this. I still felt things inside, but I learned to keep that to myself until I had all the facts. I figured out early on that when someone tells you shocking news, the main question is always, what else don't we know? There's usually more to discover. After my call ended, I dropped my phone on the bed and then had an idea. I opened the Find My iPhone app. Deanna and I used the same Apple ID, so if she bought something, I got it too, and vice versa. We shared the ID across all our devices, so purchases showed up everywhere. One benefit was that we could find each other's devices since they were all linked. I found the app, opened it, and looked for her phone. Sure enough, it showed she was at Wrigley Field. I took a screenshot for good measure. Then I sat down and tried to figure out my next step. The shock was really hitting me. I felt a mix of cold and heat. I didn't know what to focus on. I sat down heavily, bounced off the edge of the bed, and ended up on the floor. As the realization set in, I struggled to understand what was going on. I wasn't the first man to have his wife be unfaithful. Others had moved through this. Why was this happening to me? An hour later, I woke up confused about my surroundings. Once I remembered everything, I barely made it to the bathroom before I felt nauseous. Questions bombarded me from every angle. Did she love him? It certainly seemed like it from what I saw. Who was he? What did he have that I didn't? How long had it been happening? Who else knew? Did Crystal know? She must know. She's helping her. Where were they meeting? Was he married? Was he better than me? Was she going to leave me? What about the kids? What would happen to them? How did it all start? But mostly, I wondered, what should I do next? It's easy to talk about needing more information, but facing this situation was a different challenge. I was trembling as I returned to bed and fell into a restless sleep, troubled by dreams that left me feeling worse than I had expected. I realized I didn't need anything else to have a tough night. I could manage that all by myself. When morning came, I woke up sweating and shaking. I questioned if I was coming down with something, but I wasn't cold anymore, and a hot shower helped ease the trembling. I knew I needed something to eat, so I looked for a local German bar that served a good breakfast. I can't remember what I had, but I do recall that it didn't taste like much. Somehow, I made it to my client and finished the job. Thankfully, I can take measurements on autopilot now because I can't remember doing it, yet all the numbers are carefully noted in my notebook, just as they should be. It seems I'm good at my job, even when stressed. Then I found myself sitting in my car on I-90, driving back to Crystal Lake, trying to decide what to do next. Should I just leave? Go to a cheap hotel? Should I confront Deanna? Where were the kids? Had she already left? She had to know there was a chance I might have seen the footage. Maybe she just took off. If she hadn't left, would she try to play it cool? More questions filled my mind, but I had no answers. During the 2-hour drive, I made a few choices. First, I decided not to act too quickly. I was pretty sure it was Deanna, but there were still too many questions to answer. What I had told Simon was true. I needed more information. I had to find out how long things had been happening, how serious they were, and where I fit into all of this. Of course, this thinking assumed I would accept some of it if it had only happened a couple of times. Maybe I could move past it. I wouldn't like it, and Deanna would definitely have to face the consequences. But if it was something worse, then knowing wouldn't help at all. If there was no chance of working things through, I didn't really need to know more. Once I had the proof, the choice would already be made. Or would it? That was my biggest question. I didn't know how I felt. I wasn't in a take-action-now mindset, though I was very angry. I still loved her. I hadn't noticed any change in how she acted towards me or the kids. So either she was a fantastic actress or she really did care about us. But how could I make sense of that while knowing about an affair that seemed to involve true feelings? I figured I wouldn't know what I felt until I had more information. I understood my emotions were all mixed up right now, and while I knew I was upset, making big life choices in that state was not a good idea. With that in mind, I had to learn more. But I couldn't do that if Deanna found out I knew, or if I confronted her. It was better to be clever than direct. With that thought, I made my plans. The first step would be to see Paul in the morning because Paul had a brother, and he could be very helpful. I arrived home in just under 2 hours and parked my ordinary Chrysler 300C in its usual spot in the side garage of our house. Crystal Lake has a big advantage. It is much cheaper to buy a home here than in downtown Chicago, or even in places like Schaumburg or Naperville. With the money we saved, we got a 3-car garage. We only used 2 of the spaces, but one of those is a separate room from the main garage. As I sat in the car, I heard the bodywork ping as it cooled down. I took a moment to collect my thoughts. I had read about situations like this where a husband comes home and suspects his wife has not been faithful. In those stories, the husband acts sweet but keeps a distance while secretly planning his next steps. I didn't think I could fake it like that. I needed to find a way to avoid Deanna and the kids because if I spent time with them, I'd be too worried about what she might try to do if we separated. I felt lost and needed some time away from my family to gather my thoughts. I went inside, heading straight to the bathroom, even though Deanna was busy in the kitchen. She called out to me as I walked by. I made a few strange noises and mumbled that I felt sick. Deanna came to the bathroom door and asked if I was okay. I groaned and said, "Just not well. Please keep the kids away. I don't want them to catch anything." She replied, "Oh, really? You thought you were dying over a tummy ache last month. I had to help you, and all you needed was something to drink. You'll be fine. I'm making dinner, so come out when you can." Her kindness struck me differently now. In the past, I might have played the role of the poor, sick husband, and she would have looked at me with a playful disapproval while the kids pretended to help me feel better. We would all laugh, and they would give me medicine, which were usually just candies. But now, knowing what I knew, I wondered if she really cared, or if she was just pretending like I had thought before. Once you learn about hidden betrayals, nothing feels the same. Every little action raises questions. You start to wonder about the truth behind everything, and it eats away at you. Even when she tells you something, the doubt lingers because trust has been broken. This worry makes you feel anxious, and it seems like peace is out of reach. That night, I went to bed soon after her. I stayed in my room until I was sure she had gone to sleep. She wakes the kids up in the morning, so she goes to bed earlier than I do. The kids came to see me, and I couldn't help but hug them, kiss them, and listen to their stories from the day. I love those kids. I got them to promise that we could all go to the movies the next day when I was feeling better. I planned to choose a movie that Deanna wouldn't want to see, giving her some time to herself at home. She often said she felt like she never had the house to herself since we were both busy during the day. I slept in the guest room. I vaguely remember Deanna peeking in before taking the kids to school and saying good morning, but I don't recall much else. I did sleep, but felt like I hadn't rested at all. I forced myself out of bed, took a shower, got dressed, grabbed some toast, and managed to get ready. I knew I looked terrible because everyone told me so, from the receptionist to my assistant, Adriana. Oh, Adriana. I realize I haven't mentioned her yet. She's nice, I think. At least she seems nice to some people. She keeps her life private. I only know that she's incredibly efficient, gets things done, and doesn't engage in any talk that isn't work-related. She's polite and friendly to new team members, but doesn't let anyone get close personally. I don't know why, but it might be for the best. She's attractive, and I noticed a few guys trying to flirt with her, but she clearly isn't interested, which works well for the office. So if Adriana said I looked terrible, then it must be true. I sat at my desk for about 10 minutes, staring blankly, then asked Adriana to fit me into Paul's busy schedule. She told me he was free at 11, which gave me time to organize my notes from the day before. Still, I barely remembered doing any of it. All I could think about was Deanna. Was she with someone else now? What was happening? How could I find out more? I needed to pull myself together and focus on the issue at hand. This meeting was the first step. "Hey, Paul," I said as I walked into his office. Paul's office was similar to our R&D lab. He often tried out new ideas there. Right now it looked like a cozy therapy room with soft wood tones and comfortable furniture. Last week, it resembled the command center from a sci-fi show. I admired his willingness to experiment, but I found it overwhelming at times. "How's my main man?" Paul said, standing up and extending his hand. "You don't look so great, by the way." "Thanks, boss. You don't look much better. It's nice to feel appreciated. I need a couple of favors. I could use some time off." I hesitated, taken aback by his pleased expression. "Good idea, son. You've been working hard lately. How did the job go in? What was the place? Milwaukee?" That was Paul, never focusing on one thing for long. "It was fine. I just need to take care of a few personal matters. It won't take long, but I won't be around." "That's all right. You know I can handle things while you're away. Trust me." I felt a bit uneasy with that. By the time I returned, who knows what could happen. Paul had big ideas, and they often didn't end well. "Take the time you need. It's good to take a break and enjoy time with your amazing family. Spending time with Danny would be good for both of you." "Deanna? Okay, there's one more thing." "Go ahead." "I need to speak with Solomon." There was a pause before Paul replied, "Why? I have some matters he could help with." "You know what he's like. Are you really going to support him, Ryan? I don't want that." "Paul, with all due respect, he might be a bit different socially, but he's really talented and I need his help right now." "Is this about work? I can't risk having the company connected with him." "No, this is personal." Paul was quiet for a moment as he thought it over. "All right, just this once. Since you've been such a loyal partner, I guess I can allow it." Solomon Dresden had always been the odd one out. He was mixed race, and his look had caused Paul's mom to be cut off by his dad. Solomon grew up with his mother, and his life was quite a challenge. He faced social difficulties and had trouble controlling his impulses, but on top of that, he was very smart. The first time he saw a computer, he dove right in and started hacking within a month. He took down his first bank in Hong Kong, and 6 months later, the NSA arrested him. They wanted to use his skills for their own needs, but soon realized that someone who struggled socially wasn't the best choice for such access. There were some issues with him following a celebrity, and he ended up spending 4 years in a facility. After that, he was released thanks to a group named Justice Now, which argued he had been unfairly treated. Now he could only use social media, and once his father passed away, Paul took him under his wing. In this regard, Paul was pretty sharp. He understood that Solomon's skills would be in high demand, especially by those who operated outside the law. He moved Solomon around often, doing what he called his Domestic Witness Protection Act. He hired a caregiver for Solomon who stayed with him all the time. This was one of the best things he had ever done for his little brother. It was one more reason why we admired him. "Okay, so where is he?" I asked, thinking I might have to run all over to find him, imagining trips to busy airports and getting a bag out of a locker while trying to avoid trouble. "At home," Paul replied, smiling. "He's what?" I said in surprise. Paul just shrugged. He wanted to come home for a bit. I thought, why not? We gave the caregiver some time off since he was back. I didn't know how to respond to that, but time was ticking away, so I moved on. "Thanks, Paul. I'm heading out now. Call me if you need anything, but..." Paul reached out and took my hand again. "It's okay, Ryan. Whatever is going on, we can work it out together." I shook his hand, looking at him, and felt like I might break down right there. But I held myself together and left. I got to Paul's house about an hour later. I had stopped by the office and spoke with Adriana, telling her that if Deanna called, I was out on a local job. She raised an eyebrow but didn't ask any questions, just gave me her familiar "I don't care" look. I knocked on the door to Paul's house, and there was Solomon, looking tired and like he had just woken up. He recognized me and shouted, "Uncle Ryan!" wrapping his arms around me. He was only in shorts, and we were on the porch of Paul's fancy house in a gated community. It was a bit funny knowing the rumors that could arise from this. I gently pulled away and motioned for Solomon to come inside. I knew Solomon would remember me. I had bought him his first video game console and some games to go with it. Sometimes Paul teased me, saying I had started Solomon on a wild path, but I didn't regret it. He had been kicked out of 3 schools, and the poor kid just needed something to focus on, so I had helped him. We had been friends ever since. Once inside, Solomon started making coffee. He held up the pot and asked, "Want some?" I nodded. Sure. Paul had all the good stuff. Solomon poured me a cup and sat down across from me at the kitchen island, where we both enjoyed the rich coffee. "So what's going on, Uncle Ryan? You didn't come here just for the coffee." I took a moment, just enjoying the smell of the coffee. Then I blurted out, "Deanna is having an affair." Solomon immediately set down his coffee, got off his stool, and came over to hug me. It might not have been the most fitting reaction, but it felt nice. For a moment I was overcome with emotion, and then he let me go and I regained my composure. "So, that sucks, man. Are you sure? Oh wait, that's why you came. You want me to..." "I understand." Solomon made up for Paul's smarts. It was like they were one person in 2 halves. Paul had the looks and charm, while Solomon had the brains and social skills. I looked at Solomon with big eyes. "Would you? I need more information. I need to know more, and you know how to find it. I know you're not supposed to use a computer, but..." Solomon just smiled at me. "Of course, Uncle Ryan. You don't even need to ask. We'll find out and settle this. It's all possible." So that's what we did. He took out his laptop and went online. It was an eye-opening morning. I learned a lot about how hackers operate. I expected many little windows opening with lots of codes, like you see in movies, with countdowns and action. But Hollywood isn't always truthful. Most of the time, Solomon was in chat rooms. Many hackers are not as active as you'd think. If you want to get into a system, someone else might have already done it. You just need to connect with that person and either get them to share their method or their login details. There are many hacking chat groups globally where people share this kind of info. It works on back and forth. You have to give something in return. Solomon, known online as Scorbius, was famous, and people were eager to help him. First, we needed to access the booking system at Wrigley Field. Simon believed they were in a special season ticket box, so we needed to confirm it. Solomon spent some time chatting online but learned that none had been in the booking system at Wrigley Field. It's a sports thing. They were more into their hobbies. But the system used there was similar to parts of Ticketmaster, which they had accessed before. Solomon got the instructions and was inside in about 20 minutes. While he worked, I browsed the MLB website for clips of the game. I found one where the camera moved across the crowd, and there they were. Luckily, they didn't have the kiss cam part online. I wasn't sure I could handle that. From a still shot, we checked the seating plan and figured out where they were sitting. After that, it was easy to look through the database and see if those seats belonged to a season ticket holder. They did. Jordan Lawler, the name of my rival. Not just a rival, more like my true opponent. Rival suggests he might have won already. I was back and forth in my thoughts again. Should I confront him or just let it go? I still didn't know. We found his home address. It was an apartment downtown, probably not a place for raising a family. We didn't get his credit card info. I learned something valuable from this experience. Most websites that collect credit card information to charge customers don't actually keep that information themselves. There are many rules about how credit card details should be handled. There are specific servers and access methods required, and many businesses that sell things online don't have the time, money, or expertise to set all of that up. So, they often hire companies that specialize in storing credit card information. When you enter your credit card information to buy something like movie tickets, that part is managed by another company. The movie ticket company only gets a code to talk to the credit card company. The good news is, we didn't get any credit card details from him. Solomon said he could get it if I really wanted it, but I was unsure at that moment, so we decided to move on. What I really wanted was some information that Solomon couldn't find. I didn't know how often he had used his season tickets. I didn't know who he brought with him. Most importantly, I wanted solid details about the situation he was involved in. I had learned more than before, but I still needed more answers. We decided to take a break, and I suggested lunch. Solomon waved his hands and asked me to grab him a burger from Burger King while he did some more digging, so I went off to get it. When I returned half an hour later, I was amazed by what he accomplished while I was away. He had gathered a detailed report on Mr. Lawler that any private investigator would be proud of. Sure, it was all obtained in a questionable way, but I wasn't planning to use it in court, so it didn't matter. As we ate, I reviewed the information. I learned that Mr. Lawler was married, which I didn't expect. He lived in Philadelphia, had 2 kids, and traveled to Chicago to work on a company buyout. He was negotiating a deal to buy a candy company there. He had already been in Chicago for at least 8 months and would probably be there for another 2 or 3 months to finish the deal. He bought a condo to stay in since he was spending so much time in Illinois, thinking he could sell it later and break even. Now the condo was on the market. We also found out that he was a client of Royals Realty, where Crystal worked. That was the connection. That's how he met Deanna. She was staging his condo. While I was focused on the documents, Solomon pointed to the file and said, "That was fun to put together. Deanna should get involved more often." I paused for a moment, letting him realize what he had just said. It took him a second, and then he quietly said, "Oh no. I'm really sorry, man. I didn't think. You know how it is with social issues. Sometimes you say things without realizing it. Anyway, I decided to move on." I looked at him and said, "Don't worry about it," then went back to my reading. We were making progress, but I still needed more information. Then I suddenly remembered Crystal. She would definitely know something. So I took out my phone, motioned for Solomon to be quiet, and made a call. After a few rings, Crystal picked up. "Hi, Ryan. How are you? Feeling okay?" Deanna must have talked to her. That was good. It meant they were in touch. "Sort of. Hey, Crystal, do you know where Deanna is? I think there's a problem with her phone. I tried calling her yesterday and today, but I couldn't get through. It doesn't even ring. Maybe she's somewhere with no service? Do you have any idea?" "Oh, I'm not sure, Ryan. She's doing a project downtown today in an apartment building off Lower Wacker Drive. She mentioned needing to get some things from storage, so she might be heading to Crystal Lake right now. I can let her know you called if she reaches out to me." "Yeah, that works. It was the same yesterday, too. Do you know where she was then? I was curious if it had anything to do with her phone." Now that was the key question. "Oh, she was with me at a showing. We were downtown again. I've got 4 different apartments I'm showing right now." Aha, that was a clear lie. Crystal clearly knew more and was protecting Deanna. Now I had a new approach to take. "Okay, not a problem. I'm sure she'll call me when she can. Thanks, Crystal. Say hi to Charlie for me." "Will do, Ryan. Take care of yourself, all right?" Her husband, Charlie, was well known on the radio. He combined humor with his political views and was very popular in Chicago. Although he had political goals for the future, he was enjoying making people laugh. In many ways, Charlie could be more persuasive than anyone else I knew. Humor makes people agree without realizing it, which is similar to my sales techniques. Strangely enough, even though we had different political views, Charlie and I got along well. We had fun together as long as we avoided certain topics. He even called me on his show a few times. Now, I needed to find a way to get information from Crystal. She was clearly hiding things for Deanna, and I needed her to share what she knew without telling my soon-to-be ex-wife. The situation had turned again. I was going through a divorce. I needed to figure out how I felt and what I was going to do, but that could wait. So, how was I going to get information from Crystal? One thing was clear. I wouldn't get anything by just sitting around here. But Solomon might help. Hey, Solomon. Yeah? Can you keep looking into Crystal Riggs? I need any information you can find, bank details, job history, anything. She's one of Deanna's friends, and I need leverage. Solomon looked at me oddly and said, You know you sound like an old-school gangster, right, Uncle Ryan? I blinked and replied, Can you do it? Solomon was slightly offended. Of course I can. I'm just curious about what you plan to do with this. Don't worry, it won't lead back to you. None of this will be used in court. I just need to know what's happening. Solomon's eyes showed understanding. I can support that. I'll work on it. These people need to face consequences. If you need anything, just shout, okay? How do I contact you? Oh, right, you don't have my number. Just a second, he said, and grabbed my phone to add his contact. There you go. Be careful with that. I'll only keep it for a couple of weeks until I get a new phone. I smiled at the secretive nature of it all, realizing it was the first time I had smiled in nearly 3 days. But that thought quickly vanished. Crystal was my next focus. I needed to concentrate. I sat in my friend Simon's car outside an apartment building, waiting for Crystal to come out. Earlier, I had called Simon and asked to borrow his car. He agreed quickly, so I rang his doorbell since I was nearby. We talked for a bit, and I noticed he looked worried. I didn't have time for a long chat, so I took the keys, gave him mine for now, and left as quickly as I could. Part of me didn't want to discuss everything going on. I was still confused about my feelings and the direction I was headed, and I just wasn't ready to talk about it. Thankfully, he understood. He gave me a hug and told me to stay safe, expressing his sympathy again and reminding me to call if I needed anything. I drove away. I knew where the Royal Realty offices were located. They were in Schaumburg near the Woodfield Mall. I had been there a few times with Deanna, so I was familiar with the area. I also knew Crystal would be there since I had called earlier from a payphone, pretending to have a silly accent and asking if she was available for an appointment. The receptionist said she was free but had a meeting at 3, so it had to be earlier at the office. I knew she was there and would probably be upset about being stood up, but that was part of the plan. At exactly 2:45, I saw Crystal leave the office and get into her yellow Porsche. I had teased her before about that car, saying it looked too flashy and that Charlie would never drive it. Everything seemed normal, but today was different. I wasn't sure why I was following her. I just needed to do something. Maybe I wanted to talk to her, learn more about her day or who she was seeing. Now that I think about it, I probably just wanted to feel like I was doing something useful, even if it wasn't. She drove to Des Plaines and went to a meeting in an apartment building. I parked nearby, wondering what I was doing with myself when she came out again. She was on the phone, chatting excitedly, then got back into her bright yellow car. Luckily, it was easy to follow her in that bright color, especially with the heavy traffic. We both drove to Mount Prospect, which is known for the police car and the Blues Brothers. We cruised along Gulf Road and then pulled into a rundown motel with rooms that had outside doors. I couldn't understand why she wanted to stop here, but it quickly became clear when she parked next to a fancy BMW, got out, and walked to a certain room. A man in a suit opened the door and greeted her with a smile. He definitely wasn't her husband, Charlie, but he acted like he was. He leaned in, kissed her, and shut the door. I was frustrated, fumbling with my phone, wishing I was ready to take a picture. I guessed they would be inside for a while, so I decided to grab coffee from a nearby Starbucks. I returned and sat there, distractedly scrolling through my phone, wondering what Deanne was doing at that moment. Then my phone rang, and it was Solomon. I answered quickly. He said, "Hey, I've got some news. Are you free to talk?" "Go ahead," I replied. "Royal Realty has 5 partners. Your friend, Crystal, is one of them. The company is doing well. They have many profitable projects and plenty of money saved. The partners include a couple, a single woman, and a man. The couple started the company, and all of them are very devoted to their beliefs. Crystal seems to be in good standing, but we found an extra bank account with nearly $250,000 in it. It's offshore and hasn't been reported for tax purposes. If she ever gets audited... Got it, I interrupted him. So, we're not finding anything else right now. She enjoys going out, often seen with her husband, the radio guy. You know him, right? Yeah, I replied. They look like a happy couple in all the pictures I found. Can't give you more than that unless you know what you want me to look up? Nah, that's enough for now, I replied, thinking about what he said. Wait, if I give you a license plate, can you check it for me? You know I've always wanted to ask that. Sure, what do you have? I shared the license plate and I heard him typing. He said, checking the DMV is like a beginner's task for hackers. It's easy. The security is weak. Here we go. Alvin Jeffries. Lives in Rolling Meadows. Let's check his social. More typing followed. He's the CEO of Procent Builders. They are building condos off Golf Road in Barrington. And guess who's helping them sell? Royal Realty? Yes, you got it. I guess she's getting extra benefits. No wonder she has hidden money. She must be getting something in return. That's interesting. More connections. All right, Solomon, keep looking. I'll talk to you later. Just then, my phone rang, and I saw it was Deanne calling. Without thinking, I answered. It was a habit, and I didn't consider what might happen. Hey, honey, how are you feeling? She asked, sounding concerned. Oh, I'm fine, I said, and then kicked myself mentally. Being sick meant I could avoid her, and I wasn't thinking straight. I was too focused on watching the motel entrance. That's good. Crystal said you were trying to reach me? Oh, no. I had told that lie. Quick, make something up. Oh, nothing much. Just worried that your phone isn't getting my calls, in case I need you. Oh, that is strange, but it seems I can call you. Do you want anything special for dinner tonight? She asked, changing the topic. I wondered why she did that. My worries were creeping back in. I don't know. Chinese? Oh, the kids will love that. Jamie really likes dumplings. It's cute. I just sat there, amazed at how normal she sounded. At that moment, I realized our life was built on a lie, at least partly, maybe mostly, and it included some very important things. Yeah, I replied, unsure what else to say. Are you okay, babe? You sound distant. I'm in the middle of something. I have to focus. It's some tedious work I'd rather not do, but it needs to be done, I said, honestly. Oh, okay. Well, don't let me distract you. Have a good day, babe. Can't wait to see you. I have a little surprise for you. She finished her sentence with a hopeful tone. I couldn't feel any excitement, so I just grunted and hung up. I sat there for a moment, thinking about the situation. I found myself sitting outside a motel, thinking that my wife's friend and boss might be having an affair. Just 2 days ago, I never imagined this was happening in my life. Now it seemed like everyone I knew was involved in something like this. I felt lost, as if I was walking around with closed eyes, not seeing what was really happening around me. It made me question everything. Were the meetings I thought were to discuss important school matters actually just gatherings to meet new partners? Whatever happened to being loyal? Why was there so much disrespect for commitments? I never thought I would have to worry about this in my own life, but once you think about it, you start noticing things you never saw before. I needed some information about Crystal, and suddenly I found she seemed to be just as unfaithful as my wife. It made me want to pack up my kids and move far away to a place where no one would be close enough to cause trouble. I really couldn't wrap my mind around this situation. Was anyone I knew being faithful? I adjusted my phone to record again, and just as I did, the door of the motel room opened. I scrambled out of the car and pointed my camera at the scene. The guy was missing his jacket and tie, and his shirt was partly tucked into his pants. The woman was finishing buttoning her blouse, and then they shared a passionate kiss. I was recording it all. I've never understood why people cheat and then stand publicly to kiss. It's like they are announcing to the world, "Look at us. We're at a motel in the afternoon." It seems so reckless. If they were committed to each other, why would they need to meet in secret? It felt silly, but there I was, secretly watching them, so who was I to judge? The man grabbed his jacket, walked to his car, and drove away. Crystal then got into her car and started talking on her phone, and that was my moment. I needed to act quickly. I was fed up, frustrated, and wanted answers right away. I walked over, opened the passenger door of her car, and calmly climbed in, smiling at her. She looked at me with a forced smile and said into her phone, "I'll call you back. I have someone here, and ended the call. Hello, Ryan. What a surprise. What can I do for you? She said, sounding polite but clearly wishing I wasn't there. The fear in her eyes was clear, but she was clearly going to try to stay calm. Oh, I don't think you can help me much right now, Crystal. You probably need a break. It must have been a long day, right? I said, nodding toward the motel room door. She flushed and replied, I'm not sure what you mean. I was meeting a client. He has meetings in the area and stays here when he does. Sure, I believe that. But I wonder why, Crystal. Alvin lives in Rolling Meadows, which is less than 10 miles away. Why would he stay in a motel? And why did he leave right after your meeting? Crystal opened her mouth but then closed it, her eyes darting around as she looked for words. How about this? There's a bar nearby. Let's drive there and get a drink. I'm sure you need one to calm your nerves, and besides, you must be thirsty. She continued to stare at me, unsure, until I buckled my seatbelt and firmly said, Drive. She jumped at my prompt. She quickly put the car in drive, and we headed to the Under the Sea saloon. The bar was as unappealing as it sounded, the kind of place where the floor feels sticky. But it had no windows, plenty of tall booths, and dim lighting perfect for the talk I needed to have. We parked, went inside, and I ordered a club soda for myself and a brandy for her. That was her drink, if I remembered right, but not the best kind. She didn't deserve that. We sat down and I took out my phone, fiddled with it, and then showed it to her. Before we start, I want to show you this. I've already saved it, and with the push of a button, Charlie will see this. She looked shocked as she watched herself leave the hotel room, kissing Alvin and fixing her clothes. Speaking of which, I think Charlie would want to know about that secret account you have. I bet he doesn't know about it right now, does he? I took a chance with that comment, and her tight expression, along with how she gripped her glass, told me I had struck a chord. How do you know about that? What do you want from me? Crystal whispered fiercely. You know what I want, I said. I didn't think about how it might sound until I saw her pull away from me. I won't be involved with you. I'm not making this worse. I was surprised. I had been so caught up in my own issues that I hadn't thought about how my words might affect her. I should have known better. Crystal, I said calmly, I do not want that with you. I wouldn't think of getting involved like that right now. Why would I ever want to? Crystal was caught off guard by the intensity of my words. I was surprised too. The frustration I felt about Deanna was spilling out, and unfortunately she was the one in front of me at that moment. To her credit, she held her ground. She gritted her teeth and said, I'm not the one trying to blackmail you. Touché. I raised my eyebrows to show I understood her point. Well, I'm not the one being unfaithful, and that's what I need to discuss. Look, it doesn't mean anything. You can't tell Charlie. He wouldn't get it. No, I bet he wouldn't. It's just a casual thing. It's just a way to seal the deal. The money is for our retirement. We want to move to Florida eventually. I want to make sure we have everything we need. I really don't need your excuses, Crystal. I don't care. You made your choices, so now you have to live with them. I'm not interested in your messy affairs. Your reasoning, which lets you go home to a man who loves you after spending time with another man, is not my concern. Then what do you want? She asked defiantly. Money? I frowned. Like I said, you know what I want. I want to know about Jordan Lawler. Crystal looked at me in surprise and then said quietly, Oh no. She took a sip of the brandy and looked away. Yes, Crystal. You are about to betray Deanna, or your marriage could end before that drink is finished. I doubt your partners at Royal Realty would be pleased either. Oh, I think some of them would be proud, she said softly. Really? Do you think the devoted couple would be happy to hear how you're handling clients on company time? About your little savings? I bet they would have a lot to say about that, don't you? Crystal just stared at me. So spill the beans, Crystal. Tell me about my wife and this guy. What do you know? I already have some information and you don't know what I know. One lie or one piece of missing information and this video gets sent out. So do whatever you need, but tell me now. I hit the table at the end of my outburst, my anger rising. I thought I had been controlling myself well, but now that the details were close, I wanted them without delay. Crystal took a deep breath, shaking a little, and said, Okay, Jordan Lawler is a client of mine. He has an apartment downtown that he bought last year. It's been on the market for a few weeks and isn't selling, so I brought Deanna in to help show it. I've shown it several times, but nothing was working. It needed some changes. She did her usual thing, but he was home while she was there. I don't know the details, we don't get into that. Something happened between them. They've been, well, seeing each other. I don't know what to call it. She likes him and he likes her. She knows it's temporary, or at least that's what she told me. She knows he's going back to Philly when his work is done, and she wants to enjoy it while he's here. There. Is that what you wanted to know? Crystal was still shaking. I could understand why. Telling me the truth wasn't going to make me feel any better about what she had been doing. The truth might upset me enough to take action about her marriage, and she was right to worry about that. I was shaking too. Here was the proof I needed. How long? I asked simply. I'm not sure. At least 6 weeks now, maybe more. 6 weeks? I couldn't believe it. Was I really that clueless? Crystal must have seen the shock on my face because she took my hand. Listen, it's not you, okay? What little she has said makes it clear she loves you. I know it doesn't seem that way, but she does. She's doing everything she can to keep it hidden from you, even though she's taking big risks. From what I hear, that's part of the excitement. They meet in unusual places like elevators and bathrooms where they could be caught. That thrill is what she's chasing, since she knows you wouldn't agree to it. This is her way of feeling that thrill while still being married. I stared at her, stunned. Yeah, now that I say it, I get how silly it sounds. The whole idea of taking risks should have some danger to it, especially for her marriage, Crystal said, making a face as if she had just tasted something unpleasant. How did you find out? Was it something big, like on the screen? I nodded, and she let go of my hand. I told her this morning how crazy that was. She just laughed and thought there was no way you'd find out none of your friends are into sports, and you surely wouldn't be watching. It was only on the screen at the stadium. No, it wasn't. It was on national TV, I said, my voice dull. Crystal closed her eyes and winced. Wow, I don't think she knew that. She just mentioned how it excited them and they were really into it afterwards. I sat still, just listening. Is this guy something special? Is he good at what he does? I don't know, said Crystal. It's not like I sleep with every client. Just some, right? I said a bit bitterly. She looked away, not answering. Look, Ryan, I could talk about it just being physical, but I don't know what it means for her. I never thought she would do this. When she first told me, I was shocked. I mean, I've always had wandering thoughts. Her? She seems so proper. When I mentioned this, she just smiled and said, Not right now, I'm not. I don't know what to think. When I've seen them together, they look happy, like they're in the early stages of love. I hate to say it, but I think this is serious trouble. In a way, I'm glad you found out. Now I can be honest with you. I just sat there, scratching my head, trying to process everything I had just heard. My life felt like it was falling apart, and I was sitting in a bar, unsure of what to do next. There's a lot to think about, huh? I can tell you this, Ryan, those kids are yours. She's never done this before. I hadn't even thought about that. I looked at her in surprise. She raised her hands in front of her. It will hit you eventually. Those kids are yours, no question about it. She told me she never believed she would be unfaithful, so it caught her off guard. Another thing I can say is that she cares for you deeply. She has kept her life with you separate from this affair. She makes sure it never comes back to you. It happens only far away, where you won't see it. She takes care to keep things separate. You've never had to deal with anything messy from her. She's always kept it fair between you and him. She says she doesn't want to hurt you. I don't know how to explain that. She has her own way of viewing things. For me, it's just physical. But for her, it's tied to her feelings for you. Doesn't want to hurt me? Besides having a relationship with someone else and lying to me about it for weeks, you mean? I was feeling both upset and angry. I'm not sure what to say, Ryan. I don't think anything I can offer will help. Oh, you've helped enough already, I replied, frustrated. Where do you think she got this idea that cheating is okay? From you. You, her friend who sleeps with clients to get ahead, then goes home to the man who works hard for you. I realized I was being a bit harsh. Charlie was only doing his radio show for fun, but my point still stood. Crystal looked taken aback for a moment, then her expression softened. I'm not sure I can explain this, Ryan, but at its core, it's just physical. I don't know how else to say it. Oh, wait, I do. You play tennis, right? I raised my eyebrows at her and replied, Do I look like I play tennis, Crystal? Seriously? Well, you've played at some point, right? She pressed. She was getting frustrated trying to make her point, and I was being difficult, but I nodded anyway. Here's the thing. When it's just physical, it's like playing tennis. You both get tired and sweaty, work up a good sweat, but no one really loses, so in a way, it doesn't mean much. You wouldn't mind Deanna playing tennis with someone else, right? So think of it this way. If you let her have this, you also gain the freedom to do what you want, and she can't complain. Isn't that what every guy dreams of? I just stared at her, trying to piece it all together. I couldn't believe I was discussing the deeper ideas of cheating with Crystal Riggs. It felt like having a serious talk about space travel with someone very important. Where should I start? I really don't want to go through this, but some of your reasons are likely to come up with my soon-to-be ex-wife, so I might as well face them now. Crystal's smile disappeared when I mentioned soon-to-be ex-wife. I probably should have kept that to myself, but I was upset. First, while your point makes sense, Crystal, she smiled at that, it's still wrong. You don't play tennis just to have kids. Intimacy is about two people connecting deeply. It's sharing something special that stays just between you. It's about giving yourself to another in a special way that only you two understand. It isn't like a brief encounter in a cheap motel, no matter how you try to look at it. If both you and your partner see it differently, that's fine. You can choose to view intimacy in your way. But in your situation, that's not true, is it? Charlie has no idea you are seeing someone else. You know this is not right, or you would be honest with Charlie. You understand how he would feel, and you know society's views on this too. The fact that you ignore this shows how little respect you have for him and your marriage. You've created a silly idea that it's okay because you think there are no real feelings involved, so it doesn't affect anyone. That may be true for you, but you also know Charlie won't see it that way, or you wouldn't be hiding it. It's just like people who talk a lot about fake bacon, missing the point that they know real bacon tastes amazing. That's why they try to recreate it with tofu. In the end, what you've tried to say is just a way to shift the blame onto Charlie. You are saying, intimacy means nothing to me, so if it matters to you, that's your problem. Charlie feeling upset because you are with someone else is, in your twisted view, his fault, not yours. And lastly, even if you believe everything is true for you, it isn't the same for Deanna, is it? You've mentioned that you don't know what she thinks. Well, I can tell you one thing. She isn't at home with her family. She is out enjoying her time away and feeling desired while we are back home, doing the usual family activities. She's not being truthful with us. She's misleading us and not being loyal to any of us. Saffron, Jamie, Paula, and me. She made her choice when she married me in front of everyone who mattered to her. She doesn't get to change her mind later and act like it's no big deal. And it's worse because she's taking unnecessary risks to find her own excitement. I don't think she's being careful, and she's putting someone else's relationship at risk too. You say she can separate her feelings and still loves me like before. I disagree. That's just what people say to feel better about cheating. What he doesn't know won't hurt him. That's not true. Deep down, they always know. When you choose to betray someone, you understand there's a good chance it will come out. When you start loving someone else in that way, your feelings for the other person change. Sure, love for kids is endless, but love for a partner isn't the same. Life gets complicated with priorities and time. I can't accept that it's okay. I paused, catching my breath after saying all of this. Crystal looked like she was on the verge of tears. She said, I never thought about it that way. I know you probably didn't. But let's be real. If you had thought about it, you would have ignored it. You're not considering anyone's feelings but your own. The truth is, you, like my dishonest wife, haven't really thought about your actions. You've never truly considered how Charlie would react if he found out what you've been doing. If you have thought about it, you've probably told yourself, I'll make it up to him, pretending that makes it okay. How do you think he'll feel? Picture yourself in his shoes. Imagine if he were in a situation like this. Crystal's face went pale and she looked angry at first, then worried. Exactly. You can't grasp the hurt and damage your actions cause. You've done a good job of ignoring it to protect what you want. Now you've convinced Deanna of it too. Crystal frowned and said cautiously, Well, Ryan, let's be honest. Have you looked at yourself lately? Do you see how others see you? You're not young anymore, a bit tired, and maybe a little out of shape. You aren't exactly what someone would find attractive. I sat there, surprised, staring at her as she continued to express her thoughts. Is it any wonder she's looking elsewhere? Just look at you. You're not making it easy for anyone to want you. Can you blame her for being interested in someone younger and more charming? I closed my mouth and then just started laughing. Crystal seemed taken aback. She had really let loose at my expense. Oh my gosh, is that what they teach in cheaters' school these days? I asked, shocked. Really? That's the strategy? Attack instead of defend? Come on, Crystal, that's unnecessary. When we got married, there was nothing in the agreement about being faithful as long as your partner looked perfect. My vows didn't say I could cheat if one of us wasn't exercising regularly. I mean, you're right. I should have been taking better care of myself. I should be in the gym more often. I could go on Wednesday night, but oh wait, I can't, because I'm taking Jamie to karate then. What about Thursday? No, that's when Deanna has her book club. How about Monday? Oh wait, that's payroll time and I have to be there so everyone gets paid. Yes, it's my fault that I'm turning 40 and not some perfect celebrity. I guess I should wear fancy clothes all the time and get my teeth whitened so they sparkle. What do you expect, Crystal? My voice got a bit louder, and the bartender glanced over so I toned it down. Crystal pulled back, looking a little scared. I'm 40. I have 3 kids. I work 60 hours a week because if I don't, the company fails and many people will lose their jobs. I try my best to spend time with my kids. I tell my wife she looks nice. I buy her flowers and compliment her on her outfits. I work hard so she can do her thing with decorating homes. And you know what? I take my wedding vows seriously. I can't believe she's still with me, given that I don't always look the best. Honestly, Crystal, don't ever blame me for not being someone else. She's not a perfect angel either, but I find ways to love her regardless. I was really frustrated, and Crystal could sense it. She just sat quietly as I took another sip of my drink and tried to calm down. I didn't even know why I mentioned Meg Ryan Amy Adams would have been a better example, since Deanna shares some qualities with her. Maybe it shows my age. Even if everything you just said was true, it doesn't make it right. You can't just forget your vows and hurt the person you promised to be with for life because things aren't as exciting anymore. You need to talk to him. You should tell him how you feel. You ask him to take action about the situation. However, it's not really well thought out. Just think how you'd feel if you saw Charlie with your sister and he said to you, "Oh, she's just younger than you. You're getting older and she's just more lively." Do you really believe that would be okay? I paused again and took another sip. Crystal just sat there, looking stunned, like a deer caught in headlights. I took a deep breath to calm myself and said, "Now that we have talked about this, what are we going to do about you?" Crystal's eyes widened with fear. "I can ruin your marriage. You know that?" Crystal seemed to think for a moment and replied, "You realize you're trying to drag Charlie down with me. I can take care of myself. If our marriage fell apart, I would manage. But Charlie, with his strong views, would really struggle. Even if I was at fault, he would look foolish. All his hopes for a future would just disappear. Do you want to threaten him too?" Honestly, I felt like Crystal thought I was naive. I just stared at her, unsure of where to start. I had shared how her actions affected others, yet she returned to trying to get what she wanted. Crystal, you can view it that way. But the truth is, all the leverage I have is against you, not Charlie. You created this situation, not him. Sure, he might be affected by what happens, but that would be because of your actions, not his. You are fully responsible for this. And if he faces more damage than you, that's still on you. Do you really want to live with the knowledge of what you've done to him? You did this. If it wasn't me discovering you, it could have been someone else who wouldn't feel guilty at all. Right now, you have no power to negotiate, and you're trying to use a threat against someone you are supposed to love deeply to escape your own responsibilities. Crystal, you're supposed to care about Charlie more than anyone else. Why aren't you willing to do anything to prevent hurting him further? Seriously, who are you? Do you understand why you've gotten away with so much? She looked at me for a moment, then shook her head. Because he trusts you. Completely. He's not monitoring you or questioning your actions. Whatever you tell him, he believes. What you've done with that other person, and who knows who else has changed that trust into something negative. I can't even begin to express how that feels. You'll never know because you are the one causing the pain. You will not understand the hurt of finding out you've been betrayed. This happened because someone took advantage of another person's trust. If this all comes to light, you will have shattered his ability to trust any woman for a long time. Deanna has already helped me with that. Why would you want that for Charlie? We both paused for a moment, taking sips of our drinks. When Crystal set hers down, she said, "Well, you're much more serious than I thought. You could make even Mother Teresa feel bad." I nearly choked on my drink and laughed a little. It surprised me that I could still find something funny. It felt good to laugh. After I calmed down, I placed my drink down carefully. "All right, what about you, Crystal? I will handle Deanna later, but we need to address your situation. This can't keep going on like this. So here's my idea. I read something similar in a story online, and it seems smart. If you want to have fun, great. Spend time with your husband. A lot. Make it special. I like Charlie, and I want him to feel happy. Use your creativity. If you want to have secret meetings, go ahead. Buy some fun clothes. Explore new things. If he enjoys it, keep it going. You could even invite someone else along. Just make him so happy that he talks to his friends about it. I won't be asking him, so if I don't hear anything, I'll have to share this conversation. Is that clear?" Crystal looked surprised, eyes wide, and nodded quickly. "I can do that. I would like to." "It doesn't matter if you'd like to or not, Crystal. You will do it, and you also need to stop covering for Deanna. Tell her anything like you found new beliefs or that someone has an illness. Make it believable. From now on, you won't show my wife that what she is doing is okay. Do you understand? And no hint of our talk goes back to her, or things will get messy for you. And no more cheating on your part, of course. Are we clear?" "Yes." "I'm glad you understand. You got off easy today, Crystal. Now please leave. I've had enough for one day." Crystal quickly grabbed her bag and nearly rushed out of the booth. Just as she was about to leave, she turned around and said, "You really are a good person, Ryan. I don't understand why she is doing this to you. Oh, and they have their game every Wednesday at Wrigley Field. If you want to see them, that's where to go." After she finished, she hurried out of the bar without looking back. I checked my phone to see that the recording was still running. I had it all just in case. As she left, two thoughts crossed my mind. The first was that a new idea had begun to form. It would basically end my marriage. But after hearing what Crystal said, I felt like it was already over. Eventually, I would need to hear the truth from the source. But right now, I was just really angry. Funny how my confusion turned into thoughts of taking action after learning all the facts. The second thing on my mind was that Crystal had driven me here and my car was still parked at the motel. I sighed, picked up my phone, and searched for taxi numbers. That night, I went home feeling upset. I hit every red light, and it felt like every slow driver was in my way. I started to think that the things people write about setting up cameras and recording in their houses were not realistic. I had stopped at an electronics store on my way home, and all that stuff was really expensive. Plus, I didn't have the skills to set it up. I had no idea how to connect anything, and even if I did, it wouldn't help because we only used mobile phones now. Sure, it would be easy for someone skilled, but they weren't here. I was. From what Crystal told me, Deanna was careful not to bring any of that stuff into our home. The only memorable footage I might get would be of me using the bathroom or the kids hiding plastic bugs in our bed at night. They loved scaring us with that. I wondered where they got that idea from. I parked in my small garage, and before heading inside, I looked at the boxes I had bought at the store. They were little voice recorders that turned on when they heard sounds. The stories I read made it seem easy, but these could only hold 100 recordings at a time. That meant I would need to constantly check them and get the recordings off. Well, being a spy was never going to be simple, but I looked good in a suit even if it was a bit wrinkled. That comment from Crystal still bothered me, mainly because it was true. When I walked in, the kids were running around making way too much noise for such little ones, especially with the TV blaring a show that I found annoying. Paula came over and gave me a shy kiss. She was at the age where she was starting to have romantic thoughts, and I, of course, was just gross to her. I nodded to Deanna, who was in the kitchen sorting through a pile of takeout containers. She nodded back and shouted, "Good day?" "Probably not as good as yours," I replied, trying to be funny. Kids, turn off the TV, Deanna called out. This led to a collective, "Oh, Mom!" before they finally did it. Suddenly, the noise level dropped significantly. I said to Deanna, "I need to take a shower. It has been a long day and it's humid outside." And she nodded absently as she organized the food containers. "Don't take too long. Dinner will be ready soon," she replied. I went upstairs, surprised at how calm she seemed. There was no sign of the challenges she faced throughout the day. She acted so composed. It was impressive but also concerning. Was she just skilled at hiding her feelings, or was there more to it? I took a quick shower, then looked for a place to hide one of the 3 voice recorders I had bought. In the end, I stuck it to the underside of her bedside table. I didn't expect to gather much from it, but I wanted to be careful. After that, I changed into comfortable clothes and went downstairs for dinner. It was the usual lively scene with our 3 kids vying for our attention. Once dinner was over and everything was cleaned up, I also managed to hide another recorder in the kitchen. Deanna came over and sat in my lap. She gave me a special smile and let out a playful sound to suggest that dessert was coming. She whispered, "You've been home for 2 days and we haven't had time together. Let's send the kids to bed early and relax ourselves." Looking at her, I felt differently. She seemed to be offering me some attention after possibly spending the day with someone else. It didn't feel genuine, it felt like an obligation. I struggled to keep my dinner down, but nodded anyway. Then she pulled out a small package from the coffee table and said, "Surprise! I found this and thought of you." This was unexpected. What was I supposed to think? I opened the gift to find one of those GPS running watches, which track heart rate and steps. It even included a little device to put in your shoe to count your steps. I looked at her and she was watching me eagerly. She said, "I thought it would be great for the biking you are doing with Simon. It will track everything." As I looked at her, everything became clear. My life with her, the kids, our daily routine, it all felt like a performance with little real connection. It wasn't fake, but it felt less fulfilling than it should be. Our life was built on routine and unspoken expectations. She had bought me a gift, and while that was thoughtful, it showed a lack of awareness. I already had a device to track my biking, my iPhone. Deanna had been with me when I picked up the mount for it. She wasn't paying attention then, as she was on the phone, but she was there when I got excited about it on our drive home. She just wasn't paying attention, and it felt like my words were going in one ear and out the other. She didn't seem to care about what I was doing, except for the fact that I was trying to be healthy. I thought back to the times I tried to talk to her about it, hoping for at least a little interest. Instead, she would nod and say things like, yes. But I could tell she wasn't really listening at all. She was happily talking on, excited about her purchases, completely unaware that I wasn't invested in her excitement. To make things worse, the gift she got me was for runners, not for bikers like me. It was built to track footfalls, and there are no footfalls when biking. I could use some of the features, but honestly, my phone was better at it. If she had taken a moment to ask around or spend some time in the store, she would have realized that. But she didn't. That felt like a summary of our marriage. Do the minimum while pretending to care and find joy elsewhere. I had to remind myself that she at least thought to buy me a gift, but all I felt was sadness. It didn't seem fair to feel that way, but I couldn't help it. She was off enjoying herself while I was left feeling neglected, and the gift felt like a way for her to ease her own guilt rather than something meant for me. This seemed to be the pattern in our life for the last couple of years. I was trying to keep things alive with flowers, dinners out, and weekend getaways. I spent hours finding the perfect Christmas gift for her last year, searching through malls and finally choosing a diamond necklace and even lessons for us to try together. But despite my efforts, we did one lesson and never returned. I realized she never put in that kind of effort for me. Every year, she just asked me for links to things on Amazon, and that was it. There was no thought behind it. She just clicked a link and made the purchase without really considering what I wanted. Gift giving felt one-sided. Suddenly, a wave of sadness washed over me. It hit me that we were truly done. Everything I discovered pointed to the fact that she had already moved on. She might care for me in some way, but the person she truly loved was elsewhere. It felt like I was just a passing thought for her. That struck me hard. It made me realize how much I felt like an afterthought in this marriage. The tears came as I faced this painful truth. I'm not afraid to say it. I cried for our marriage, for the fact that it was over. I cried for letting it happen and not seeing it before it was too late. I cried for our children because divorce is never easy for kids. They would spend years wondering if it was their fault. And I cried for myself, for being let down by someone I trusted completely. Deanna looked confused. She could see I was upset, but she didn't understand why. At first, she tried to lighten the mood, saying weakly, "Hey, it's just a workout device. No need to cry, Ryan." I just stared at her, cried some more, and then suddenly got up and went to the bathroom. "Paula, take the kids upstairs. Watch something in your room. Your father and I need some time," she told our oldest, who was watching in shock. Paula gathered the others, with Jamie complaining because he was in the middle of playing Lego Star Wars on the Xbox. I could hear Deanna outside the bathroom. I was starting to calm down, breathing heavily as I looked at myself in the mirror. How did it come to this? My wife seemed willing to betray me and our family in the worst way. What do you do in a situation like this? How are you supposed to feel? How are you supposed to act? Some people might respond with anger and want to fight back. At times, I felt like that too, wanting to make others feel the hurt I felt. Other times, I just wanted to hide away and avoid everyone. It was clear that I didn't need to be around people to survive. But then I thought about my kids and the pain they would feel, realizing that no matter what happened, I would never really be free of Deanna. She would always be there, as their mother, reminding me of everything. I felt trapped. I felt angry. I felt out of control, not in a way that makes you want to hurt others, although I had some of those feelings, but in a way where life was happening to me instead of me directing it. I was just reacting to everything instead of being able to change my path. I had never felt this way before. I had always been in control as the head of a mid-sized company. But now, I had no idea what to do with my life. For so long, I had purpose while I gathered the facts, trying to catch Crystal and find out what was happening. Now I had the information and I had to decide what to do next. She had no idea what I knew. I needed to make a choice, and like a coward, I didn't make one. I decided instead to hold it together and figure it out tomorrow. I took some deep breaths, thought quickly of what I might say to my wife, and came out of the bathroom. She was waiting just outside. "Are you okay, Ryan? This isn't like you. What's going on?" "I got some news today from Simon. One of the guys we bike with has a tumor. I had just started to get to know him and enjoy hanging out with the group when this happened. He's not doing well, and the doctors say he might only have 6 months left. When you gave me that gift, everything just came spilling out. It made me think about my own life and how fragile it is. I couldn't believe I was saying all of this, and Deanna seemed to really buy it. I guess I felt it was my turn to respond, especially since she had been keeping things from me. "Oh, that's terrible, Ryan. Is there anything we can do? I'm so sorry. I didn't mean..." She trailed off. "I just need some time, Deanna. I think I should go have a drink by myself." I felt inspired and strong in this moment. I was building a barrier that she wouldn't try to cross anytime soon. "Of course, the mill is open. Go have a drink. Call me when you want to come home and I'll come get you." "Thanks," I said, giving her a brave smile. That was how I left things. Before heading to the bar, I hid another recorder under the front seat of her van, then went to the Mill Tavern, had a drink, and called Simon and Solomon. It was time to make some plans. They arrived in about 30 minutes. Solomon was really curious about the bar. He didn't socialize much, so this was a new experience for him. He sat quietly, looking around at everyone and the staff. I got him a soda, and then Simon came in with more drinks. Suddenly, Solomon seemed to understand what everyone was talking about when it came to having fun. He looked very happy. "All right, we're all here. Simon, this is Solomon. Solomon is really smart, but not great in social situations. Am I right, Solomon?" Feeling good, Solomon replied, "Exactly. I have no social skills. Wow, she's nice looking." I couldn't have planned it better. Simon stared at me and took a sip of his drink. Then he leaned in and asked, "We're not going to have to pull him away from anyone, are we?" "No, I doubt it. I need to tell you everything I've learned." Both of them listened closely as I explained what I knew from Solomon and from Crystal, including the whole gift situation. I wrapped it up by saying, "So Simon, if you get calls from Deanna, play along with the sick friend story, okay? It keeps me away from her for now while I think about my own life." Simon nodded and said, "Got it, my friend." "So what's the next step in Uncle Ryan's plan?" asked Solomon. "Well, I think we're done. I just can't trust her anymore. She has this whole other life with someone else, and I had no idea. No signs of unhappiness, no changes in our relationship, nothing at all. She's just too skilled at hiding the truth. But now I see things clearly, and there are consequences for both of them. I know exactly what I want to do. They're looking for risky excitement? Well, we are going to give it to them." I shared my idea, and both Solomon and Simon looked surprised. Then Simon started to laugh, and soon Solomon joined in too. I couldn't help but chuckle. We had a good laugh, and then Solomon pointed out something I hadn't even thought of. None of it was unlawful. Sure, we'd have to do some things in a tricky way, but in the end, everything would be completely fine. I had no clear plan for how we would make it happen, but we were determined to try. We spent the rest of the evening discussing how to go about it, what it would cost, and what each of us would do while making plans together. There was still a lot to put in place, and I was going to start the next day by seeing my lawyer. That night I went home, and thankfully Deanna was already asleep. I had called to let her know Simon was giving me a ride home so she didn't have to stay up. She sounded relieved, and I knew the day had been tough for her. I was sure she needed a good night's sleep to recover. Now that I had a plan, I needed to get things moving. I knew I had to separate from Deanna, and she had to understand some of my pain. She needed to face reality and realize that I wouldn't tolerate this anymore. It would be challenging to carry out some of this. Part of me was eager to see it all unfold, while another part felt sad and ashamed for wanting that. I wanted to protect the kids as much as I could, but I knew this was the real world. No matter what I chose to do, they would have to face a divided home. With that in mind, I might as well do it my way and find some satisfaction in it. The next morning, I got up early and left before the kids woke up. I knew Deanna would wonder where I was going, but soon I wouldn't have to answer her questions anymore. I went to breakfast at IHOP and called my company's lawyer, Jonathan Brudy. We had been friends for a long time. I had dated his wife before they got together, and I could tell he wasn't too happy about that. His wife, Angie, and Deanna were friendly, going on shopping trips together. But despite that, we maintained a good relationship. I had to go through with this. The appointment was set for 10 in the morning. When I walked into his office, he greeted me with a big smile and warm handshake. He was likely pleased because I had sent a lot of clients his way for legal help. I explained why I was there, and his expression changed. I wasn't sure if it was because he saw me as competition for his wife or if he didn't want to see a couple he knew split up. Honestly, it didn't matter to me. He wouldn't be involved in my situation anyway. "Ryan, I really sympathize with you," he said, "but I'm not sure how I can assist. I focus on business law, not family or divorce cases." "I understand. I'm actually looking for advice on which divorce lawyers to consult. Could you give me a list of the best ones within 10 miles and the top 10 in Chicago? I want to have options." The main reason I needed this list was that after having a 1-hour free consultation with each lawyer, they would have a prior connection to me. Due to that, it would be a conflict of interest for them to take Deanna's case. I was essentially limiting her choices before she could even reach out. Plus, I needed a lawyer anyway, so this was smart. I knew this was a bit sneaky, but I felt justified. I was determined now, and I wouldn't back down. "Of course, I can help with that. I'll have my assistant look into it. Would you like some coffee while we wait?" We enjoyed some coffee, and it felt polite, though I could tell he wanted to ask more questions. Before I left, I felt it was important to clarify. This is confidential, right? No talking to Angie. I want to keep this from Deanna for now. Jonathan looked a bit hurt by my concern. "Ryan, I thought you trusted me. I wouldn't share anything." "I'm glad to hear that, John. This is very personal for me, and I need to be careful. I didn't mean to question your professionalism." He paused before saying, "It's okay, I get it. Once this is all done, let's grab a beer. If you need to talk, I'm here. I'm sure Angie would be supportive, too." That surprised me. Maybe I had misjudged Jonathan after all. But a small voice in my head worried, "Sure, and then Angie can tell Deanna." I left his office feeling uncertain about myself. I spent the rest of the day setting up meetings with each lawyer on the list, and I did the same for the next 2 days. In total, I managed to arrange 14 meetings in just 3 days, which I thought was enough. My evenings were now spent taking the kids to their activities, something Deanna usually did. I insisted on doing it, claiming I needed to be more involved in my life. Honestly, I was getting better at it. Regardless, it meant I was not spending time with her. I had chosen my lawyer, a tough woman named Sarah Gold. She had been through a divorce herself and was known for being quite fierce in her work. When I told her my situation, she was shocked and exclaimed, "The big screen? Really?" She agreed to take my case right away. I left her starting the paperwork for the divorce. The first part of my plan was finished. I couldn't stop thinking about Deanna and this guy Jordan Lawler. Who was he? Why had she chosen him over her commitments to me? I wanted answers. Our initial information on him didn't satisfy my questions, so I decided I needed to meet him. I also realized that if my plan worked, it might lead to legal trouble for me. We had to be careful to keep my involvement hidden. Ideally, I wanted to collect evidence without putting myself in the spotlight. To do that, we needed proof that they were together, preferably video footage. This was the part of the plan I dreaded the most. If we got the video, someone would have to watch it to see what we had. There was no way I would let Solomon or Simon do it, so it had to be me. I wasn't sure I was ready for that, but we needed it to protect ourselves. This meant I would have to set up a camera in his apartment. I felt that I could pull this off. He probably didn't know me at all, especially if Deanna hadn't shared much about our family with him. I hoped she was keeping things separate, or it would be a rather awkward situation. I just needed to meet him and see what was so special about him. I talked to Solomon, and he set me up with a tiny Wi-Fi camera that was mostly battery. There was one issue. Its range was limited. We would need a nearby computer to record the feed. Solomon had an old MacBook that could work. We just had to find a place in the building to hide it, so it could catch the camera's signal and record everything. We also needed an external drive since the laptop's storage was too small. To be honest, I started to lose focus as we discussed the details. Again, the stories I read didn't really cover this kind of thing. They just showed people putting cameras in their houses, and that was it. It's a lot more complicated than that. Funny how those stories skip over the details. I had gotten the recorder from Deanna's car and listened to some of the conversations. Mostly it was just work talk or her chatting with friends. Apparently one of the girls in the book club was being unfaithful. How surprising. Hearing Deanna get upset about it almost made me sick. I mean, couldn't she have given some advice on keeping the husband clueless? She was really good at that herself. I listened to lots of bad music on the radio and small exchanges with people on the phone or when she ordered fast food at some chain place. Again, the stories don't talk about this, do they? They say things like, "I listened to calls from that night without mentioning how boring that task really was. It's not a quick job, it takes hours. I got through 40 minutes. Then I texted Solomon to ask if he had tips to speed it up. Within moments, he suggested I download a program called Audacity. This would let me open the recorded sound and see it as a wave. In no time, I could tell what was speech just by looking at the wave shapes. There was another program called SoundForge that was even better and could do the work automatically, but Audacity was free, and SoundForge cost a lot, so being the cheapskate I am, I decided on Audacity. With this new method, listening went much faster, and I soon heard the one conversation that broke my heart again. "Hey." I noticed it wasn't even, "Hey, it's me." Just, "Hey." That showed a closeness that was much more than just a new romance. But then, if Crystal was right, this had been going on for more than 6 weeks, so I shouldn't be surprised, even if it made me feel really upset. "You are bad," she said, laughing. "You can't answer the phone like that. What if it was your mother calling?" "Oh, great. I know. I needed to check in. Sorry I haven't called. Things at home are a bit difficult right now, and I need some time here. He's going through something, and I have to be here for him. Yes, he came home from Madison, but he was unwell. Then he got some bad news about a friend, and he's been spending time with the kids. I know that's good for you, but it's hard for me. You know why. I'm not explaining this again. My home life is my home life, and you don't need to be part of that, just like they're not part of this. If you keep asking, I'll end it. Yes, of course I can. Just like that if I wanted to. Yes, of course I can. No, I'm not addicted. You might be, I'm not. She laughed, showing that she knew she was hooked but didn't want to admit it. That would be too obvious. Look, I need some time to think, okay? Maybe I could come by in a couple of days. Yes, I remember our plan. Not this week. We can do it next week. Which day? I don't know. All right, Thursday then. Are you happy now? Thursday evening. I can ask Crystal to cover for me. I'll say we need to prepare a house that night. But that wouldn't really happen. I wondered what excuse she would come up with instead. We won't have long, but enough. No, I can't stay. You know why. Yes, you do. Maybe we can plan a weekend later, but not now. Yes, you know it. No, I won't say it. I don't. I appreciate what you do, but I'm not going to say that. That's for my husband. Right, you can try, but I still have some doubts. No, I won't say anything that I have to deal with later. No, no. She was still laughing by the end, so all her denials didn't seem to matter much. I knew what he wanted her to say, and she was close to saying it. My marriage was in worse shape than I had thought. Okay, I'll see you on Thursday evening. Be home, and be ready. That was it. I sat there shaking, caught between anger and sadness at something ending that I couldn't control. I wondered if I could go upstairs and lie down next to my unfaithful wife without hurting her. I decided I wouldn't, and instead had 2 shots of whiskey and made myself comfortable on the couch. As I fell asleep, I crafted a story about my buddy being in the hospital and that the end was coming sooner than expected. That should help me avoid talks about going to bed. The next day, I called Crystal and arranged to visit the man her friend was seeing. I needed to do it before Thursday, and with 2 days to spare, I felt confident. I planned to act as though I was from out of town looking for a place in Chicago and wanted to meet the owner to learn more about it before making a decision. Crystal thought it was odd. Usually people didn't want to meet the sellers, but in this case, it made sense. She agreed to set it up. I didn't ask about her or Deanna. It was just easier that way. I had enough on my mind. The appointment was set for the next day, and again that evening, I found a way to get out of the house. I took the kids to see the latest Pixar movie, and afterward we had dinner at Red Robin. Deanna was okay with it since she had plans for the next evening. This gave her a rare chance to relax at home alone. She told me a story about one of her friends in her book group getting a promotion and wanting to celebrate. She asked if I could watch the kids while she enjoyed some time to herself. I said yes, even though it hurt to know what she really meant. I was surprised I still had any feelings left to hurt. The next day, Wednesday at 3 p.m., I knocked on the door of the apartment. I had already hidden the laptop in a nearby supply closet. Each floor had its own laundry room, and there was a small room beyond that with cleaning supplies. Although it was supposed to be locked, I managed to open it with a credit card. I placed the laptop on the floor and covered it with some paper from the laundry room. I also found a plug to power it. I hoped it would still be there when I returned in a couple of days. Then it was time. I knocked on the door and it opened to reveal him. He smiled and said, "Jordan Lawler, you must be James Goddard. Come on in." I looked at his hand, then took it. I didn't want to. I wanted to be angry, but I needed to stay calm. I stepped inside. The apartment looked nice. What upset me was seeing pictures on the wall that came from my house. There was an ottoman from my den. It was decorated with little touches that were clearly Deanna's, and it made me feel sick. Jordan Lawler seemed to have a similar build to mine, but was younger, maybe 5 to 10 years. He had a friendly face, sandy blonde hair, a tan, and an easy smile. I didn't like him, but I couldn't say I was surprised. He showed me around, and I took out my phone, asking, "Do you mind if I take some pictures?" It would help me decide later. I was careful with my words. It was important to get permission to record in his apartment since my phone was capturing everything I said. It might not hold up later, but I thought it was worth a try. We explored the apartment, and I noted the view and the bedrooms. It was a 2-bath place, one in the hallway and one in the bedroom. When we entered the bedroom, I couldn't help but glance at the 4-poster bed, and my mind wandered to thoughts I really didn't want. Jordan noticed and said, "It's a nice bed, isn't it? I can include it in the price." I felt uneasy, and I had to control my urge to confront him. I decided to just imagine things instead. I forced a smile and said, "Oh, I'm sure." "Do you have a beer? I'm really thirsty. It would be nice to just sit here, have a beer, and think about living here. Oh, of course. Let me get one, he replied, rushing off. As he left, I couldn't help but think about where his kindness had gone. He was with someone else's wife. I took the chance to explore the bedroom, pulling a small camera from my pocket and setting it on a bookshelf in front of the bed. I hid the camera behind a little decoration, a black wired piece with glass beads that I had bought for Deanna during our trip to Vermont for our 4th anniversary. It felt like a reminder of what I was losing. I was heading to the living room when he returned with the beer. I looked at it and thought about leaving, but I really wanted to know more about him. I was sure he wasn't a good person. He had a family back in Philadelphia and was involved with mine. By that measure, he was quite wrong. Maybe they just fell in love, but I couldn't accept that idea. If that was true, I had missed something huge. I couldn't believe my wife could fall out of love with me and into love with another person. Our marriage had its ups and downs, but it wasn't terrible. Unless she had been hiding her true feelings all along. But now I wondered, was she unhappy and keeping it all inside? I was still unsure of what to think. Yet, I was convinced this Jordan guy was not a good person. I just needed to get him talking. I took the beer and sat on the couch while he sat across from me, raising his bottle in a sort of toast. So, Crystal tells me you're here for a group planning to build a factory? Yeah, that's about right. They want to build out in the suburbs because of a tax deal. He shrugged, making it clear he wasn't too interested in discussing it. What about you? Why are you moving? I asked. I'm heading back east. I was here to negotiate a company buyout, and now we're almost finished, just waiting on signatures and a new management team. I got this place because it was cheaper than renting. So, I said, putting down my beer and leaning in a bit, what's the best part about living here? The view? Having your own place? No kids? It was my only way to steer the conversation in the direction I wanted. Jordan chuckled and said, well, I'd say the baseball, but since I'm a Phillies fan and all you have here are the Cubs and the Sox, you can see my dilemma. I even bought season tickets for the Cubs this year, just to find out what everyone was talking about. It's a bit funny, isn't it? So, if that's not the case, it's definitely about the women. Oh, really? I replied in a way that showed I was open to listening if he wanted to share. Oh yeah, I don't know you, but maybe that's a good thing. They say it's easier to talk about your problems with strangers than with people you know. I have a family, but I've been stuck here for a year. A whole year. All for work. I have needs and they aren't being met. So I found a way to cope. I just raised my eyebrows while grabbing the bottle again. I needed something to do with my hands. She's quite charming. Lives the suburban life with kids and a nice house. But when she's here, she lets loose. It's wild. She loves to have fun and be adventurous. It's strange how we connected right away, and it seems she finds something here that she's not had before. She wants to be spontaneous in various places. We've had our moments in my car, by the lake, in an elevator. She even planned for that by wearing a skirt, and even in the bathroom of a tall building. Apparently the view from that bathroom is amazing, even if I didn't notice much because I was focused on her. I listened to him, amazed that I could stay calm. I was recording everything on my phone, but like a stubborn habit, I couldn't stop myself from digging deeper. Are there any feelings? Or is it just a casual thing? Feelings. Well, not really. We both know this isn't going to last. I'll be heading back east soon. I'm not leaving my family for her. But as an escape, I really enjoy it and wish I could stick around longer. I've never felt this drained by anyone before. I'll be coming back often, and you can bet she'll be the first person I call. But about feelings, can I be honest? I motioned for him to continue. Honestly, I want her to tell me she loves me, even though I don't know why I need to hear that. I've tried to get it out of her, but nothing yet. I think it's only a matter of time. I understood. I needed to figure out how to handle this situation, but I couldn't rush into anything. For now, I just needed to listen. What about her life at home? Isn't this risky? For you too? I think that adds to the thrill for her. As for me, her life is far away and I haven't shared any details about myself. If she texts me when I'm home, I simply get a new phone. It solves the problem. She doesn't even have my email. As for her home life, it can't be too great if she's seeking this kind of attention, right? She didn't think twice when I suggested we spend some time together. She didn't hesitate at all. In just a moment, she was on the bed looking for my attention. It was clear her husband wasn't giving her what she needed, but that wasn't my concern. I knew I had to leave before I lost my temper with him. I set my beer down and said, "I should go. Thanks for showing me around and for the talk. I'll think about this over the next few days. You'll hear from me soon." I meant it. I walked to the door and he followed me. Then he said something that really bothered me. "You know, I could probably set you up with her. You take the place and I bet I can get her to help you out too. Same deal." I couldn't bear to look at him. If I did, I knew I wouldn't be able to control myself. I couldn't afford to end up in jail for someone else's mistakes. I rushed to the elevator, feeling shaky. I needed a drink. I headed straight back to Crystal Lake and met Solomon at a bar near Main Street. He had already been there for a while. He was in good spirits, but had enough sense to stay focused. "So, I've been looking into, he said with a smile. "Have you?" I replied, ordering a large beer. Solomon often avoided being too clear in public. I found it a bit odd, but I needed his help, so I went along with it. "What have you discovered?" I asked. His grin widened. There were 4 empty beer bottles on the table, so he had reason to be in a good mood. "Everything is sorted out. It took a while, but I spoke to a few people in LA who know about this. I even did a practice run in San Diego to see if I could handle it. With the tools I have, everything worked perfectly. The software is impressive. It simplifies the whole process." "That's great," I said. Solomon didn't notice that I just wanted to drink because he asked, "Is everything set up?" My drink arrived, and I nodded before downing it in one go. Just then, Simon joined us at our table with a proud look. "Mission accomplished," he cheered, waving to the waitress. I raised an eyebrow, finishing my drink. "I found 3 of them at a bar downtown." "A bar? At lunchtime?" I asked. "They're that kind of crowd. I asked someone nearby, and they told me that's where they hang out." "Did you find our target?" I inquired. "Oh, yes. I found 3, and 1 was the guy we needed." "That's lucky," I said. We had a list of 7 names, but didn't know whom we were actually looking for. The waitress returned, and we ordered more drinks. More than you know. When I sat down and explained our plan, they couldn't stop laughing for 5 minutes. They're in a good position. What's even better is that another guy had an idea, and he's going to take care of it. Simon explained what the other guy suggested while our drinks arrived. When he finished talking, we all raised our glasses to celebrate. "How much is this going to cost?" I asked, a bit worried about the expense. Simon smiled and said, 3 bottles of Jameson Absolute and Courvoisier." I raised my eyebrows and asked, "Is that all? These guys are really supporting you. One of them had a rough time with an ex, and they're all eager to balance the score." "You told them what to say if anyone asks?" "I did. They were already on board. It was the obvious choice." "Okay. We need the video, and I'll get that in a day or so to protect ourselves if needed, plus a few pictures. Now the next question is, should we talk to his wife? Should we give her a warning? We know this could affect her marriage, too." We had found Michelle Lawler on Facebook linked to her husband's account. We saw family photos, their address, everything. The question was whether we should inform her of our plans. "Honestly," Simon said, No offense, Ryan, but you're too soft-hearted. If she tells you to drop it and that she'll handle her husband, what then? You'd walk away without closure. The truth is, he's not a good person, and she needs to know in a way that shakes her. She should be mad and upset enough to make a strong decision for herself." I looked at Simon, considering what to say. He voiced my thoughts, but they felt selfish. I was hurt, and in a way I was also harming someone else's life. But from another view, I wasn't entirely to blame. My wife and that man had already caused the hurt. The problem was that his wife didn't realize it yet. I was simply revealing the truth to her. While my approach might be dramatic, it meant she would know either way, and it gave me some sense of satisfaction. Finally, I nodded at Simon and said, "I agree." Then I turned to Solomon and asked, "Are you sure everything is ready? Has it all been tested?" "It is. We are all set to go. Tomorrow." I felt the need to use the restroom, so I quickly headed there. When I returned, I noticed that both Simon and Solomon were trying hard to look casual and not at each other. They seemed to be holding back laughter. Something amusing must have happened while I was away. "What's going on?" Simon looked at me with wide eyes as if innocent, and Solomon focused on his beer. What? No, what have you two done this time? I asked, a bit frustrated. I realized I had left my iPhone on the table when I went to the bathroom, and it was unlocked. Another silly mistake. I glanced at my friends, who I suspected had tampered with it. When I picked up my phone, I expected to see a silly post. To my surprise, there was nothing. I knew they had done something, but I didn't have time to figure it out then. Instead, I poured some whiskey down the front of my shirt. Simon noticed and sat up, concerned. Solomon paused with his drink. Don't worry, just avoiding any plans tonight, I told them with a smile. Simon, can you give me a ride home? Simon agreed, and on the way I received a work message. I used Siri to reply, and that is when I found out what my friends had done. Siri called me bitch instead of my usual nickname. Very funny, I said to Simon, who tried hard not to laugh. When we got to my house, I acted like I was drunk as I walked inside. Deanna came into the kitchen right away when she heard me. I was trying to make coffee, but kept making a mess. Are you drunk, Ryan? She asked, disapproving as she sniffed the air. I just grinned at her. Kind of. Oh, what are you wearing? Deanna had on a light nightgown and a cardigan. She pulled it tightly around herself and crossed her arms. It seemed like she had been getting ready for something nice, but my arrival changed that. I stood there swaying slightly and smiled foolishly. She shook her head and said, Sleep it off on the couch, you goof. Then went upstairs. I waited until she was gone to finish my coffee and see what I had recorded on TV. The next day I got up early, telling everyone I was going to work, but I really spent my time at the movies and then at a tavern nearby. I got home early as promised. Deanna was still upset with me from the night before, and we barely spoke. It was a bit icy between us, with only necessary words exchanged. Later, Deanna came downstairs while I was playing video games with Saffron. Paula was doing her homework, and Jamie had a controller, but didn't realize it wasn't working. He thought he was controlling my character. I knew I would be helping Paula with her math homework later. She struggled with fractions, and I planned to go through the problems with her. It was always rewarding to see her eyes light up when she finally understood something new. I really enjoyed being around kids. Deanna came downstairs wearing a nice skirt and tall shoes, with a white blouse that was stylish, yet simple. We had picked out the blouse together while we were in New Orleans, where it had caught her eye. She had worn it on Bourbon Street and had received many colorful beads. She looked beautiful, wearing the long earrings I got her for Christmas. When I saw her, I had a strange feeling that something significant was coming to an end. I knew I would be hurting her and her friend, and our happy times would not last. I thought, this is all going away. It hit me that I had the power to change everything. I hadn't really given her a fair chance to explain herself. Thinking about that made me say softly, Deanna, stay home with us. Don't go out. Being with your family is more important, right? She looked at me while holding her purse, and I noticed she hesitated. She glanced at Paula, who was sitting at the table, focused on her work. Then she looked back at me. When she saw my expression, she tightened her jaw and shook her head, saying, What kind of friend would I be if I didn't support her during this important time? She didn't look back at me as she left the house. Well, that was her choice. The next day I woke up early and headed straight to Jordan Lawler's apartment. I really didn't want to talk to Deanna, especially after what had happened the night before. I realized I was part of the problem. I was avoiding her and not giving her a chance to share her feelings. Even last night, when she got home late, I could smell wine on her when she climbed into bed with me. She also smelled fresh, as if she had just bathed. I understood why some men felt confused in similar situations. Many just wanted revenge, influenced by their own issues and biases. They wished for the women involved to face consequences. It all seemed very clear-cut. But until you've been in a situation where someone you love seems to lie to you, you can't fully grasp the pain. And still, she was the mother of my children, and she treated me well. She had even tried to share a closer bond with me. Even from the talks I had heard on the recorder and what Crystal and that terrible person, Jordan Lawler, had said, I could tell that she still cared for us. For me, the kids, and her life with us. But there was a whole other part of her life that we were unaware of. Honestly, if it weren't for that phone call from Simon, I would have never known. I have to admit that. I wouldn't have looked for it or noticed anything different. She treated me and the kids just the same. If I wanted, I could just walk away. She would never find out what I knew, and it would end when Jordan left for Philly. If I had wanted to, I could have gone out and done something similar. She wasn't in a position to object. Maybe that's what I should have done, gone out and had my own adventure, let her find out somehow and see how she would react to the betrayal. But I couldn't do that. I know what is happening. I know the truth. I see the disrespect towards me and our home, even with the excuses my wife is making for her actions. She is seeking something I never knew she wanted, and I never got a chance to provide it. I believed in the old saying that 2 wrongs don't make a right. Sure, it would balance the score, but it would likely ruin everything if she thought I had done the same. Whatever reasons she might have for her choices wouldn't hold up if the situation were reversed. The double standards would come to light, and while she might be able to live with it, our relationship would never recover. Trust would be gone, and I could never trust her again after the lies I had already seen. The truth is, I was angry and hurt. I felt betrayed and lost, swinging between sadness and intense anger. I didn't see how I could ever forgive her without breaking what we had. I knew that in time the hurt would lessen, but I couldn't imagine living with her after what she had done. She had shattered my trust in her, and without trust, what does a marriage mean? In stories, there is often a woman who helps mend the wounds of the guy who has been hurt. There's usually someone from high school, a waitress, or a chance meeting with someone special. But that wasn't going to happen for me, and I wouldn't have wanted it anyway. I felt broken inside and knew it would take years to heal. As I told Crystal, what Deanna had done would linger for a long time. My confidence, my sense of self, it was all damaged. And I didn't even understand why. I had a lot of thoughts from the information I had gathered, but I had never heard it directly from her. I knew I would have to sit down and talk to her at some point, but not yet. It was too early. I would be too upset. At that moment, it would be about hurting her instead of truly listening. So here I was, sitting in a small closet by the laundry room, looking at a video on my laptop and crying. Everything was there. I didn't have any video from the living room since there was only one camera, but what happened in the bedroom was painful to see. First, there was their conversation. When they entered the bedroom, Deanna's blouse was almost falling off. Clearly, he had been too close to her. When she sat on the bed, she accidentally revealed too much to the camera. He was nearly out of his clothes. I felt a strange sense of relief that he wasn't larger than I was, but it was the last thing I wanted to think about that day. He looked at her on the bed and said, "I can't believe you are here. You look wonderful. That husband of yours is a jerk." Deanna crossed her legs and frowned. "That fool. I wanted to surprise him. We haven't been close in almost 2 weeks because of everything. I really wanted to give him a nice evening, but he came home completely drunk. I was ready and he ruined it all." "Your evening?" Jordan asked, clearly intrigued. "Yeah, I thought it was time. We've done everything else," she replied. "I'll find a way to talk to him later. He deserves it after putting me through this. He had a chance and chose to drink instead. I would rather you spend the time with me." And then it just kept going. She was with him multiple times and did things I couldn't believe. I was thankful I had been asleep when she came home the night before, so she hadn't kissed me when she greeted me this morning. He still tried to get her to say she loved him. There were lots of, "Oh man, I love this with you, don't you? And I'll miss this when I'm back in Philly. Don't you feel the same?" And other obvious attempts to get her to express feelings for him. I thought I would be numb by now. The evidence was clear and I couldn't deny it. I wasn't misunderstanding anything. I felt betrayed in the worst way. But I wasn't numb. It was so hard to watch. I kept pausing it, crying, then forcing myself to continue. I needed to see everything. Even if it hurt, I had to stay true to my path. I loved her, but I had to respect myself enough to confront this situation. The ending was painful. Deanna had just finished her shower and was getting dressed while he lay on the bed, relaxed and content. "So, heading back to suburbia?" he asked with a hint of disdain. "Back to suburbia," she replied. "Doesn't that get dull?" She paused while pulling up her socks, looked at him and said, "Why do you think I'm here? Of course it does. Kids, meetings, a husband who talks endlessly about his day. It's exhausting, but it's my life. And I do love my children and the stability it brings. I care for a good man, and I feel the same way about him. But sometimes it just isn't enough. I know this won't last, but I plan to enjoy it while I can and create memories." Jordan smiled and made a suggestive gesture. So, you'll think of this when you're with him, right? She smiled back and said, I'm already doing that, my dear. That remark struck me hard, even if I mixed up my words. I spent half an hour editing the video and saving it onto a USB drive, then packed up my computer and cords and left the building. I walked into Sarah Gold's office, confident like I belonged there. She looked up from her screen and leaned back in her chair. Aha, so we have more evidence? Was her first question, skipping any pleasantries. I placed the USB drive on her desk. She glanced at it, then at me, and picked it up. This better not have any viruses. She plugged it in and opened it. A list of files appeared, with the video on top. Naturally, she clicked on it first and watched for about a minute before shutting it down and saying, That's enough of that. Then she turned to me and asked urgently, Where did you get this? From his place. She sighed and rolled her eyes. You fool. There's no way this could be used in court. Did you break in and set up the camera? Play acceptance wave, I replied. She selected that file and I appeared on the screen asking Jordan Lawler for permission to record at his home, with him agreeing. Smart move, Sarah said sharply, but a good lawyer will tear that apart. He wasn't granting permission for you to record his private life. Oh, I know, I said, taking a seat in front of her desk. But I'm certain that just mentioning this will change things. I really needed to find out if it was happening, and now I know. Plus, it could be helpful if we face any complaints. Sarah stared at me over her laptop and said slowly, Are you going to make things hard for me, Mr. Tomlinson? Please tell me you're not planning anything foolish. I replied firmly. No, I won't be doing anything foolish, as you say. I know what I need to do. I didn't think my plan was foolish, and the other comment was just meant to be comforting, without really saying anything. She nodded and then grabbed a folder from her desk and tossed it to me. Well, everything is in here. There are two options. One for you to keep the house and another for you to give it to her. You know you'll need to pay her child support even if you don't have to pay alimony. I understand. What do you think about the alimony? I asked, truly curious. It's hard to tell. You're completely right in this situation and she's completely wrong, so if it was just about that you wouldn't have to pay any. But it depends on her lawyer, which judge we get, and other factors. I wouldn't say it's guaranteed. We'll have to see how it plays out. I nodded. It was what I expected. So this will be filed next Wednesday, where we planned? Yes. The alienation suit is included too, but I wouldn't count on it too much. It's worth it just to make him uncomfortable. Okay. What about the restraining order? That won't be ready until Wednesday. It needs to be filed on the day you want it to start. I'm pretty sure we can get it, but remember it won't last long. Once her lawyer sees it and challenges it, it could be taken down. I understand. It's mainly to give me some peace for now. I might ask you to cancel it in a couple of weeks anyway. So I guess we file these, handle the financial things, pick up the order on Wednesday, and then move on? Well, you will. I still have to come back here to do this exhausting job, Sarah replied, looking around her office. Thanks for doing it. I tried to lighten the mood. Sarah Gold looked at me and then said, Don't let the door hit you on your way out, and pay my bill, please. I did my part. I smiled and took out my checkbook. The day everything started, I was at Paul's place with Solomon and Simon. We were watching a game, hoping to see if the camera showed them in their seats. I had gone back to work that week and discovered the huge mess Paul had made of a contract with a company that wanted us to build their office. There was no way we could do it for the amount they agreed, especially with all the extra requests they had. But Paul just smiled and cheerfully said, Make it work, Ryan. So I took the contract to Jonathan Broody, handed it over, and listened to him fume for 5 minutes. Paul hadn't even checked with our lawyer. He just listened to the other side, smiled big, and signed it. They must have felt like they won the lottery. I spent most of the afternoon looking over the contract to find any weak spots so we could increase our billing. Finally, we found a section that wasn't in our favor. I had to set up a meeting with the other company's CEO to explain how he was trying to take advantage of us, and let him know that we wouldn't accept it and how we planned to respond. Surprisingly, the man laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh, but more like he found it amusing. Ryan, we were surprised when you didn't show up for the negotiations. Of course, we tried to get the best deal. That's just how business works. I expected you to come back to me with an issue. That's why that section is there. I wanted to see if you would actually do something about it. You have, just as I hoped. Now that you have, we can continue to work together. I was confused and said so. Ryan, what we really want is for your team to build facilities for us across the U.S. We just got a grant from the government to create educational facilities everywhere, and we need help with the construction. You have a great reputation for integrity, and I appreciate that. Would you like to take a look at a new contract instead? He handed me a stack of papers from his desk. I sat there trying to process everything. When I brought the new contract back to Jonathan Brody, he laughed as he reviewed it. His eyes sparkled when he said, "Now this is a well-written and fair contract. This is good, Ryan. You will need a lot more staff to handle all this." I cringed. "Oh, I know. We'll probably need a second location." "That works for me," Jonathan replied. Then he paused and asked, "Are you doing all right, Ryan? What happened with your wife?" I looked away. "It's fine," I said vaguely. "So, what's the first legal step we need to take?" That was yesterday, and now today, I'm about to make a big change in my marriage. I was at Paul's house, enjoying a beer and watching the game while wondering who was picking up the kids from school, since their mother was at a game with her boyfriend. I realized I did not even know who had been taking care of that on other days. On a whim, I called home, and my sister-in-law, Melissa, answered. I never got along with Melissa. She had made up her mind about me when I started dating Deanna and never bothered to see if she was right or wrong. I had tried to change her opinion once, thinking it would be good to keep Deanna's family happy, but that never worked. The more I tried, the more she criticized everything I did. After about a year, I gave up and decided to move on. I got along well with her brother, but both of her parents had sadly passed away in a car accident when Deanna was a teenager. I often wondered if Melissa knew what was happening. She seemed like the person who would enjoy seeing me struggle, and I didn't want to find out. I just made sure she had the kids and would be there until either Deanna or I returned home. Melissa was fortunate to marry a wealthy man who then sadly died. I sometimes thought he might have left her instead. Either way, she was now financially secure and had plenty of time on her hands. Without any children of her own, she was always ready to help with babysitting. I got the feeling she wasn't interested in dating and was only focused on herself and her family. As for her nieces and nephew, I had to give her credit. She truly loved and took care of them. Even if she didn't like me, she cared for those kids. It was interesting that she was willing to spend her time with us, but she made it clear that her money was hers, and we should not ask for any. Not that we planned to anyway, but it was a strong message. So we enjoyed her company and appreciated her help with the kids. It was nice to come home and see that she had been there. The kids would ask why I wasn't home more and why I didn't teach them to play soccer, all thanks to Melissa's influence. Deanna just laughed at their questions, but I found it frustrating, to be honest. Anyway, I talked to her for a few minutes, and before I hung up, I asked if she still had the extra room at her place. She said she did and wanted to know why I was asking. I hinted that she might be getting a roommate soon and left it at that. Then, it was game time, the bottom of the 6th inning. Solomon was on his laptop and looked at me, asking if we were ready. I raised my finger and took out my phone. I couldn't believe I was giving her another chance. I called her number, and after a few rings, she answered. I could hear some noise in the background as she tried to keep the announcer's voice from coming through. Yes, she answered sharply. Deanna, what do you want? I'm with a client. Come home, please. We really need you. Come home right now. Leave your client and come home. Ryan, what's wrong? The kids are fine. Melissa is with them. I know, I just called home looking for you. Where are you? Why does it matter to you? I'll be home this evening. What's so urgent that I need to leave right now? I just need you. I want you to come home. Please. For us. For me. Ryan, I'm in the middle of an important meeting. I can't leave now. I'll be home this evening. We can talk then. Whatever it is, it can wait. She hung up the phone. Tears rolled down my face as I nodded at Solomon. Simon placed his hand on my shoulder and reassured me, "This is what needs to happen, my friend. Everything will be okay." Solomon began typing and said, "We've been connected since the game started. I can see the director's commands." On the TV, the game was on, and suddenly the stadium's big screen displayed a message during a break in the action. "Hey, folks," it announced. "Remember these two from a couple of weeks ago?" Then it showed a quick image of my wife and Jordan with a label saying Kiss Cam at the bottom. "They are back here today." This is where it got complicated. I had asked Simon to talk to the cameramen whose names appeared in the credits of the last game and explained our plan. One cameraman agreed to help us. We requested that when the Jumbotron mentioned this couple, he would find them with his camera and zoom in on them. This was our challenge. There were 7 cameramen in the stadium, and we didn't know which one was facing where Jordan had his tickets. He was the one we needed the most. Luckily, one of the other cameramen laughed and said that when the big screen started to show that couple, he would zoom in to ensure the details were shared on the national feed. Solomon was switching between 2 laptops. One controlled the Jumbotron, and the other managed the vision mixing software used to decide which camera was being shown. The issue was that the software simply labeled the camera numbers, and we had no way of knowing which camera was which. We'd been watching throughout the game, trying to match the camera numbers chosen by the director with what we were seeing on the screens to identify each camera. We figured it out and were now able to display any camera we wanted on the Jumbotron. And we did. The cameraman on camera number 5 helped us out by focusing on Deanna and Jordan. They were watching the big screen and laughing, pointing at themselves when Solomon changed the feed to that camera. On the TV showing the game, we could also see the big screen since the other cameraman had zoomed in on it for everyone to see. Next, the screen showed a photo of Deanna from her birthday party last year. "This is Deanna Tomlinson," read the caption. Then it changed to a photo of Jordan from his Facebook page. Her companion is Jordan Lawler. After that, it showed a picture of me. Deanna is married to Ryan Tomlinson. Then there was a photo of Jordan's wife and kids, also from Facebook. Jordan is married to Michelle Lawler, back in Philadelphia. The feed switched back to Deanna and Jordan, who looked upset. Jordan was searching around, shouting something. Neither of their spouses know that Deanna and Jordan are here, as they have been every Wednesday for weeks. The screen then showed a cropped image of Deanna and Jordan, carefully composed to display their faces. It was clear they were together, but nothing inappropriate was visible. "Deanna and Jordan are cheaters. We just thought you'd like to know." After that, we handed control of the big screen back to the staff at Wrigley Field, who were likely in a frenzy. The image remained on the live feed from camera 5. Jordan had left, and Deanna was sitting alone, looking very upset. As soon as they left the field, process servers were waiting at their cars. Jordan was served with a notice about his actions, and Deanna received both a restraining order, which had been filed that morning, and divorce papers. Originally, I thought about serving them right there on the field and having the last words on the screen be, "You've been served." But that would have pointed directly to me. Although it was pretty clear I was involved, Solomon assured me he had a way to keep my identity hidden. He had routed everything through several computers before reaching them. I had never spoken to the cameramen. Only Simon had. If they were shown my picture, they could honestly say they had never seen me before. So I settled for this outcome. It was done. I spent the day closing accounts and canceling credit cards, leaving only the main account open because Deanna relied on the debit card linked to it. I took my name off the account to avoid any alerts. That was that. I turned off my iPhone, nodded to my 2 partners in this plan, and left saying, I need to finish fixing the locks. I got home in about 20 minutes, and when I walked in, Melissa was upset. "What did you do? Deanna was on my phone, crying and shouting. Did something happen at a game?" I sighed, grabbed a diet soda from the fridge, and said, "Melissa, here's the situation. Deanna has been unfaithful to me for weeks. I found out, and I've taken steps to protect myself. She has a restraining order until we sort out visitation. She can't come here. I've packed her stuff and put it in the garage. That's why I mentioned needing a new roommate. She won't be living here." Melissa was really angry, but I sensed some understanding in her, too. She muttered, "Why can't people just be faithful?" Then she nodded and said, "I'll handle her. You'll need to talk to her." "I know. Just not right now. I'm still too upset. When she gets here, give her the bags and tell her she can't come inside. If she tries to, I've already changed most of the locks. I just need to finish the garage door. Besides, if I need to, I can call for help, and she'll end up spending the night away. She doesn't want that. She's been through enough today. The divorce details are clear in the paperwork, and I'm being fair, so she should accept it." Melissa sighed, then did something surprising. She hugged me. I was taken aback. "It's terrible, isn't it?" I looked at her and nodded. Tony, her husband, was unfaithful all the time. No one knew. I stayed because I loved him and, well, the money. But it really messes with your self-esteem and how you treat others. I'm so sorry, Ryan. It's so frustrating that my sister would do this. I just can't understand. She loves you and enjoys her life here with the kids. She tells me that all the time. What's going on? I don't know either, Melissa. Maybe she'll explain when she's ready. I really have no idea. For the next hour, Melissa and I talked like we never had before. I learned that her trust in men was gone because of Tony's actions. I didn't think she liked me anymore by the end, but at least we understood each other better. And that counts for something, right? Then Deanna showed up and chaos began. She tried the front door but found it locked. Then she moved to the windows and started banging on them, calling my name. Melissa went outside to try and calm a very upset Deanna, who was yelling for the kids. I had already told the kids to stay upstairs. I explained to the kids that Mommy had done something not so good and that she was going to stay with Aunt Melissa for a while. I reassured them that they would still see her a lot, just not at home for now. I also mentioned that Mommy might feel sad and might raise her voice sometimes, but that was okay. It was just her way of showing feelings, kind of like when they hurt themselves. It took Aunt Melissa nearly 30 minutes to calm Deanna down so she would stop banging on the windows. I heard the garage door open and the sound of bags being taken out, and then Deanna came back, looking through the kitchen window. I stood in the doorway so she couldn't see me, but I could see her. "Ryan? Ryan, is that you? I need to talk to you. Please, Ryan, please. You can't take my kids away from me, please." I couldn't help but laugh a little when I noticed she was only worried about the kids. She wasn't thinking about me or what had happened. She just wanted her comfortable life back. I stayed quiet and watched her as she looked around, probably hoping to find me. She must have thought I would be there since Aunt Melissa was around and the kids would be too. "Ryan, please. It was nothing. I love you, Ryan. Only you. You have to believe me. I need to talk to you, please." I didn't move, and after a few minutes, Aunt Melissa came over and gently led Deanna away, talking to her quickly. I heard the cars start up and saw Aunt Melissa's car drive off, which was smart since Deanna wasn't in the best shape to drive. That was the last I saw of Deanna for 3 weeks. Not that she didn't try to reach out. She called, texted, and emailed often. She didn't seem to care about the restraining order. Honestly, I wasn't going to enforce it. It felt more like a gesture to me. After 2 weeks, I actually had it removed once things calmed down. I just hadn't gotten around to informing her. 2 weeks later, my lawyer, Sarah Gold, called to tell me that Deanna had hired her own lawyer using Aunt Melissa's help. He was reportedly a low-profile lawyer, which didn't bother me. But Deanna was firmly refusing to agree to a divorce or any separation. She wanted to have visits with the kids, which I was okay with since I had lifted the restraining order. She also wanted to talk with me. I knew this was coming, and I recognized that I would have to allow it. I wanted to understand her reasons, but I realized I needed more time to process everything first. Maybe now was a good time. Life had become a bit calmer. Deanna had seen the kids. Aunt Melissa had taken them over to see her, and we had started to find a routine again. The kids were still asking me a lot of questions about where Mom was and why she wasn't home, but they were also carrying on with their lives. So I asked Sarah to prepare everything and let her know that the restraining order was lifted. We could set a time for Deanna to come by and pick up anything from the house that I might have missed. We decided to meet at Red Robin at 3 p.m., hoping it would be somewhat quiet. I didn't want to do this in front of lawyers or at home, so Red Robin it was. Plus, it was nice that they had a bar there. I arrived first, sat down, and had a beer. Within 5 minutes, Deanna walked in. She was always on time. She wore a long dress that caught my attention. Even with her puffy eyes, she looked nice, and it tugged at my heart. She smiled a little shyly and said, "Starting early, I see?" while pointing to my beer. "You've driven me to this," I replied, trying not to sound too bitter. Her smile faltered, but she worked to shake it off as she sat down across from me. "Well, this is your chance. Just say what you need to," she said. I wanted to learn more, but I wasn't going to push her with questions. "Okay, here goes. First, I am truly sorry. I can't understand why I did what I did. I must have lost my mind. I interrupted her. No, you weren't confused. You chose to betray me, our marriage, and the kids. You knew exactly what you were doing. You even had your rules to protect yourself at home. You weren't lost at all. You knew what you were doing. She looked at me, surprised. I realized she didn't know everything I had found out. I know what you mean. I just don't know what made me act this way. I love our life. I love our kids. I love you. You are such a good person. I know what I did was wrong, but I don't truly understand why. I have some ideas. For one, your sudden thrill-seeking. I don't understand why you didn't come to me. Why didn't you talk to me? I thought we were okay and you wouldn't need to look elsewhere. But maybe I just don't know. You've been talking to Crystal. That sounds like her. How do you think I found out what was happening? She sat quietly, taking this in. That makes sense. She didn't want to cover for me, and that's why I lost my job. You knew, right? After the stadium incident, she asked me to gather my things from the places I staged. She said Royalty Realty didn't want people like me who got too much attention. I left my things at Jordan's place. I really didn't want to go back there, and I knew he didn't want to see me either. The only time we talked, he called to yell at me because his wife is leaving him. She must have found a video of us, and that was the end of it. He blames me, I blame him, and it feels like a silly cycle we can't escape. Deanna never used bad language, so hearing it from her was surprising. Can I get a drink? She asked. Sure, I replied, and signaled the waitress. Deanna ordered and then sat quietly until her drink arrived. He went crazy when he saw your picture on the scoreboard at the stadium, she said. He recognized you from when you came to see his apartment. In that moment, he knew everything was going to come out. He got really upset, swore a lot, and then just left me there. I sat and cried, understanding what it all meant. After that, I went to my car and found this girl waiting for me. She was chewing gum, looking very casual, and she asked my name and handed me an envelope. Deanna paused as a tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it away and took a deep breath to steady herself. I told myself I wouldn't cry. I didn't think you deserved that. What did I deserve, Deanna? What do I deserve now? I asked gently. I didn't want to yell at her. I felt there was no point. Better than me, that's for sure, she said quietly, looking down. I just stared at her. I wasn't going to argue, but I didn't have much to say either. There was a long pause as she tried to find the words. I had a speech already, you know, everything I wanted to say, but now that I'm here and you're over there, you seem so steady and I feel like a wreck. She took another deep breath. Okay, let's get to it. First of all, you're not just a messy suit. Well, maybe you are, but you're way more than that. You're a great father, a wonderful man, and any woman would be lucky to have you. Don't listen to what Crystal says. She's just upset that her marriage is falling apart and is looking for attention in all the wrong ways. Before she let me go, we talked about what was happening in our lives. She helped me see things I had been ignoring. The main thing you should know is that you didn't do anything wrong. I take full responsibility. Don't let this hurt how you see yourself because of my mistakes. I didn't agree with her, but I felt I needed to say something. Easy for you to say you're not the one who was betrayed. Do you know what that feels like? It makes you question everything you've ever done. You look back and judge yourself for it. You don't know what you did wrong or what you didn't give. I'm sorry I wasn't enough for you, or you wouldn't have looked for someone else. Tears started to flow again, and she said, her voice shaky, It hurts me to see you like this, Ryan. I can't believe I did this to you. You are such a wonderful man, in every way. The only failure is me, for not seeing what I had. No, that's not right. I knew what I had, and I loved it. I still do. The kids, our home, our lives. It's what I always wanted. But somehow it wasn't enough. I didn't even realize I felt that way until Jordan showed up. I was happy and content. Then this chance appeared. I thought I could manage it without you knowing. It felt new and exciting, like I had a secret. I know how foolish that sounds now, but those feelings were real. I ignored the consequences of my actions, but at the time I was caught up in it. That's my failing, not yours. Please understand that. You did nothing wrong. In fact, you did more for my happiness than anyone else has. The flowers, the attention, it all matters to me. And still, it wasn't enough. I don't know what would have been enough, Ryan. I think I just got weak, and things spiraled out of control. I never brought home anything from him, though. I promise I didn't share anything with him that I didn't share with you. Apart from something physical, I said with bitterness. Oh no, you know about that too? I nodded quietly, letting the moment sit between us. Yes, he did get something. I wanted to keep it for you, but you were not yourself that night. But I wasn't being fair. That moment after coming back from Madison was planned, wasn't it? You knew? You just didn't want to be close to me. How could I have missed that? I thought there were other reasons, like you said. I could see the realization wash over her. Don't be so hard on yourself, Deanna, I said dryly. You tricked me for a long time. Consider it a lesson learned. She snorted a little. Then she asked, her voice tight. Did you really have to call me out at the stadium, on the big screen? You couldn't have waited until later? You had to put me in that position? This was classic Deanna, trying to make sense and shift blame, which was a pattern in our relationship. It bothered me how she could turn things around so easily, but I wasn't going to let that happen now. Did you really have to betray me like that? I replied with a sharp tone. She looked away. Point for me. Then she turned back, her eyes wide with a new thought. All that guilt over my choices. It's something I need to work on. That was you, wasn't it? She doesn't think clearly enough to come up with those points. We both know she's been acting out for years. Everything she told me, that was you? You reached her, didn't you? I just looked back at her. There wasn't much to say. We stayed quiet for a moment, locked in a stare. Then I took a chance. Deanna, I said, asking the one question I really needed to know. It was the question I promised myself I wouldn't ask. But now we were here, and she didn't seem ready to share it. I had to know, even though I feared the answer. What was your relationship with Jordan Lawler? What did you feel for him? You say you love me, but you haven't mentioned how you felt about him. She bit her lip and tears welled up again. I don't know. Honestly, I don't. We seemed to be drifting apart, you and I, too much going on, not enough joy. Then he showed up. It started as a casual thing, but I spent time with him. He's a nice guy. I didn't understand why he was unfaithful to his wife, beyond what he told me about their situation. I didn't think about it too deeply because then I would have to think about why I was with him, and I didn't want to face that. I just wanted to enjoy it. But we became close. We shared things. When I was with him, I was fully there, if you know what I mean. There were no other friends around, just us, without any distractions. You naturally become closer to someone like that. He was funny and charming, and he made me laugh and feel important. He reminded me of a younger you. You would have liked him if you met him. I just stared at her, feeling hurt. Well, maybe not, but I'm not sure what we were. We weren't in love. I made that clear. We both knew it was temporary. I think we were both infatuated, with each other and with what we were doing. The risky adventures? Yes, she admitted. I don't even know how that started. He suggested a surprising place one time, and I thought, why not? Once I did that, it became a thing, the possibility of getting caught. It felt so exciting. Why didn't you come to me? Why couldn't I be the one you turned to? Oh, I couldn't do that. We don't do things like that. What would you think of me? You are my husband, not my... She stopped short, realizing what she was saying. And there it was. I was put in a box, just like Crystal had said. I was one thing. And there was another side she wanted. Thanks for that. Just another blow to my pride. Oh, Ryan, I didn't mean it like that. What we have is special. What I had with Jordan was just a different part of my life. He seemed like a fancy doll, not just someone to be with. I didn't realize I needed this until it happened with him. Well, that makes everything okay, right? She said, dripping with sarcasm. I was really starting to get fed up. There were too many details, and she didn't even seem sure of her own feelings. Of course not. I'm trying to explain myself. I never said it would make sense, but I do know this. I love you. I did not and do not love him. I liked him and had fun with him. But I know I love you and everything you've given me. I never forgot about that. Well, maybe I did at times. He kept wanting me to say I loved him. I don't know why, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't talk about you at all. Please understand that. I kept those parts of my life separate, and I worked hard to show you the same person I always was because I was still that person, just with a new side. I looked down at the table as she spoke, and then she said, "Talk to me, Ryan. Share what you're feeling." I looked up at her and said with strong emotion, "What I'm feeling? I feel old, tired, and unwanted. You think he's a younger version of me? Well, I can't stop aging, Deanna. I feel like you were falling for another guy and I didn't even know. If Simon hadn't called me that day to watch that game, I might never have found out. How blind am I? I went through life happily and naively. You were great at hiding it, and I just didn't see it. And now you tell me you aren't even sure about your feelings for him. I can tell you how I feel about you very clearly. I hate what you've done. I hate everything about it. I hate the betrayal and that I don't seem to be enough for you. Honestly, it seems like you're not even that sorry. You're sitting here sharing all these details, but you don't seem truly remorseful. You hid your feelings from me and from your kids. Did you ever think about what would happen to them if they found out? Did you? No, you didn't. Because if you had, you wouldn't have acted like this, but you did, so here we are. I love you, Deanna. I always will, but I can't be with you again. There's no trust. You've proven you can lie very well, and I just can't believe anything you say anymore. We're done. You know that, right? There's no way back from this. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I knew you would react this way. I knew you would see it like this. From the moment our pictures appeared on that screen, I knew this would be the end. I can't honestly blame you, but I don't want our lives to end. I love you and can't function properly without you and the kids. I want another chance. Please tell me what to do. Tell me what you need to move past this. Hurt me, punish me, do whatever you want, but don't cut me out. These 2 weeks have been the hardest of my life. I have not stopped crying. Melissa found me a counselor, and I have started seeing them. But it will take time for me to understand everything. I just don't see how I could have kept this up for so long. That isn't like me. But I need you. I need you next to me at night, holding me so I feel safe. I need your laughter. I need everything about you, Ryan, and it hurts so much that I messed it all up and I don't have it anymore. I know you need me too. Yeah, well, I'm spending a lot of time trying to move on from that need. You really hurt my heart, Deanna. It's broken, and I don't feel like fixing it right now. Oh, please, Ryan, I just need a way to reach you. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for everything, for what I did, for hiding it, for how you found out, for whatever made me do it, everything. I can't believe I acted that way. Tell me what you need from me. I need to be away from you, Deanna. The pain is still too fresh, and you are too good at lying. You have things you want that I can't give you, and you need to move on with your life, too. We have the kids, and we can be okay as co-parents. I won't keep them from you. No matter what else happened between us, you are their mom. Oh, and I checked. They are mine. That made her cry even more. She sobbed. Of course they are. How could you even think otherwise? I just looked at her as she continued to cry. Deanna, if you are seeing a counselor, I'll support that. I hope you find some closure. If you need me to forgive you, then fine, I can do that. I forgive you. Whatever you think you need forgiveness for, I will give it. But I won't forget, and I need to focus on my own life, away from someone who doesn't respect it. No, she said simply. What? I replied. I don't know what else I can give you, Deanna. You've had everything. If you think I'm going to just say it's all okay, come back, you are mistaken. No, I mean it's not enough. I know you'll never forget, and you shouldn't. I won't either. But I need you, Ryan. I can't explain it. I acted how I did because you were always at home. If I had truly believed there was a chance you would find out and leave, it would have stopped right away. I was too confused in the moment to see what I was doing. But I need you. I need the kids, our life, and I'm going to get it back. I don't know how, but somehow I will figure out a way to be in your life again and make you happy. I couldn't see how that could happen, but I felt like that was her problem to figure out. Let her believe what she wants. It can't hurt me anymore. Good luck with that, Deanna. I glanced at my watch and said, I need to pick up the kids. I'll see you later. I left a 20 on the table and got up. Deanna sat there in tears, and I felt my heart break one more time. Epilogue. Something else happened, but it wasn't a fairy tale ending or the arrival of someone special who made everything better. Deanna and I did our best to co-parent, at least on my end. I tried to be friendly and ensure she spent equal time with the kids. Kids are tough, but I knew Paula was especially affected by our separation. One day she directly asked me, "Is Mom seeing anyone else?" I just smiled at her and said, "No, sweetie, she's all yours." That wasn't entirely true, but I didn't want to hurt a 12-year-old any more than necessary. I have no idea if Deanna is dating. She claims she isn't and that she's waiting for me, but I can't trust what she says anymore. I don't have the time or energy to check. She still invites me for dinner, but I'm not ready for that yet. I've been to counseling a few times, mostly to share my side. I made it clear that I wasn't trying to get back together. I just wanted someone to understand my life and my experiences with Deanna. I haven't gone on any dates. I don't get why people think that after a marriage ends, women will be eager to date. It seems to happen in many stories where once a guy is single, women line up to date him. In my reality, things just carried on. Adriana remained difficult, and if anyone was arranging dates, it certainly wasn't for me. Work continued. A new plant opened, and Paul became the chairman of the board, a role that kept him busy but out of trouble. I did become the CEO. Just kidding. The board put the position up for bids, and now there is someone 10 years younger than me, with less experience and sometimes just as foolish as Paul, taking the lead. I did get a pay raise, though he doesn't know it, but I earn more than the CEO. The board was smart. After all, I'm the middle-aged guy in the wrinkled suit. The new CEO has much better hair than I do. So that's where we are now. About a month after everything happened, I received a letter from the legal team for the Cubby Bears. They invited me to a meeting at Wrigley Field, suggesting I attend to avoid any legal troubles. With such a generous invitation, how could I say no? So there I was, sitting in their conference room, looking at all the signed jerseys on the wall, thinking about what would happen next. Maybe they wanted to ask me to play. Then John Upton, the head of Wrigley Field, walked in wearing a nice suit and sat down across from me. He leaned back in his big chair and stared at me, and I tried hard to look relaxed. He started, "So, Mr. Tomlinson, can you give me one good reason why I shouldn't sue you for what you did?" "Oh, I can come up with something," I replied, trying to sound confident. That was a lie. I felt pretty nervous. A criminal case would require proof against me, but in a civil case, I needed to show that it wasn't me without any doubt. Honestly, I couldn't do that because I knew I had been involved. "Look, if you could prove anything, I wouldn't be here talking to you, right? You would have just filed the case. The truth is, while I appreciate the effort someone put in, I can't take credit for it. Plus, if you sue me, it becomes public knowledge. You faced enough embarrassment already. If you lose the case, then what?" That was about all I could think to say. I hoped it would be enough. John Upton was a big man with silver hair and glasses that made his eyes look bigger as he looked at me. "I see," he said. "So we're taking this route, are we? All right. Ryan, can I call you Ryan?" I nodded. "I need to make an example of whoever did this. Someone broke into our computer system. While that's not a serious crime and the FBI is involved, they aren't too interested since nothing was stolen and no threats were made. I need to ensure this doesn't happen again. The only way to do that is to make an example out of you. Don't you agree?" I couldn't help but laugh. It all seemed so reasonable. But I didn't agree, and I told him so. "I think you're just inviting more trouble for yourself, but I have something for you." I opened my briefcase, took out a folder, and slid it across the table to him. "What's this?" he asked. "I thought you might bring this up, so I talked to some friends who are good with computers. They checked your system and figured out how someone might have accessed it. There's a report inside that you could share with your IT team to help make your system safer." "And you just happen to do this out of the kindness of your heart?" John said, sounding sarcastic. "Try to see it from my perspective. What would you do if you were innocent? I'm just trying to defend myself." John looked at me with an expression that showed he was thinking over what I had said. "Well, that's useful. Do you have anything else to add?" "Yes, I do." I handed him the thumb drive with the video of Jordan and Deanna. "This is a video of the couple. If you face a lawsuit for defamation, you could consider revealing this. Remember, it's only defamation if it's not true, and this certainly is true. We were wondering about that. Your actions have made this a possibility. If we don't get sued, it's only because we are fortunate. It turns out I can't even let go of any of the cameramen since they are not actually our employees. They work for the TV distribution company. I had a serious talk with them to see if they knew this was coming. They looked surprised. When I asked them why they chose that couple, they asked what I expected them to do given what was on the screen. One of them remembered where they had been before and just zoomed in there. He was trying to get me to admit something I hadn't done, but I stood firm. I haven't done anything, and I'd appreciate it if you would stop suggesting otherwise. Remember defamation? He sighed and kept glancing at the file I'd given him. Then he set it aside, took off his glasses, and said, "Okay, Ryan, let's be honest. You're here because I wanted to understand who you are. I've looked into your background, and it seems you're a decent man trying to raise 3 kids with your ex-wife. You've treated her better than she deserves, and I don't want to harm your life unless it's justified. And it's not justified. So, this conversation ends here. But don't let it happen again, Ryan. You've used up your chances." He picked up the thumb drive and the folder and turned to leave. He said, "You can find your way out. And Ryan, it gets better. There are other women out there. Believe me, women who won't hurt you. I found one. You can too." With that, he left, and I was left there, thinking about what to do next in my life. The man fiddled with the microphone, tapping it and testing the sound in that annoying way some people do. There was a camera on a tripod next to his chair, aimed at the chair where the woman was sitting. After making a few adjustments, he seemed satisfied and took off the headphones before settling into his chair. "Okay, Deanna, we're ready. Just to confirm, are you really sure about this? I still think it might be too soon. Some of your actions and how you respond might be more complicated than you expect." "I'm okay with this. I need to do this. It's weighing heavily on me, Jim. I can't sleep at night because I haven't talked to Ryan. I need to tell him what happened, how I feel, and how much I love and miss him. I have to do something, or I feel like I'm going to lose my mind." The older man in the checked shirt and worn cardigan sitting across from her smiled kindly. "Yes, Ryan mentioned that you can be very determined sometimes, focusing so much on one thing that it keeps you from seeing the bigger picture. I wonder if that is part of your struggle, Deanna." Deanna shot a sharp look at the man she called Jim and replied firmly, "This is going to be tough enough, okay? We've talked about this, and going through it all at once is going to be difficult without you adding your opinions." Jim thought carefully about what to say next. "You're right, Deanna. I'm sorry this is hard for you, but remember, when you first came here, you asked me to be honest and straightforward. You wanted the truth, and that is what I'm giving you. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. It's your choice, and you are doing it because you feel it's necessary. So let's not get caught up in feeling sorry for ourselves when you are taking a step you believe you need to take." There was a tense silence between them as Deanna considered his words. Jim wondered if he had pushed her too far. After a moment, Deanna relaxed a bit and said, "Okay, fair enough. I guess you're right. Sorry." "You don't need to apologize, Deanna. You are intelligent, and you can see this too. It's just a difficult situation you're in. Opening up is hard for anyone, especially when it involves things you feel ashamed about. It's natural to feel uncomfortable." Jim chose his words carefully. Deanna could be sensitive, so he needed to find the right balance to encourage her to face her challenges. Over the past 10 weeks of their meetings, he had noticed that she was very clever, skilled at justifying her actions and blaming others. However, she struggled to see her behavior from another person's perspective. She often viewed her choices only from her own narrow view, allowing herself to create justifications for her feelings and reactions, making her seem reasonable while others appeared unreasonable. Ryan, her husband, had been a part of this process. Jim had seen him 3 times on his own, and the history and stories he shared had given Jim a lot of insight into what Deanna had told him. When Deanna first came in, she seemed to be searching for reasons for her actions toward her husband and family. But what she truly wanted was some reassurance that her choices were not as terrible as she feared. She was struggling with how society and Ryan viewed her actions compared to how she saw them herself. What she really needed was for a professional to support her views, but that was not going to happen. It took 8 weeks for Jim to break through her defenses and show her the reality of what she'd done, how she'd hurt the man she loved and their marriage. Her justifications turned out to be just excuses that allowed her to act as she wished without thinking of the consequences. "How do you want to approach this, Deanna? Do you want to share everything freely, or should I guide you and ask questions?" Both. I'll start with some background, and then you can jump in when you think it's right." Okay, and to be clear, what do you hope to achieve here? What do you want to say to Ryan? I need him to understand what happened. He must know about the progress we've made. He should get the complete picture no matter how difficult it is. I can't stand that he's in pain and doesn't know why. He deserves to know where my mind is now so that we can move forward. I owe him that, and actually a lot more, but this is all I can do. He won't talk to me and I can't blame him, but I have to do something. Got it. So you want to lay everything out clearly, both your past and how you feel now? Is that right? Yes. All right, take your time, Deanna. Jim relaxed in his chair and glanced at his watch, wondering how long Deanna would need. She was determined to go through this, and he hadn't been able to change her mind. He worried that if Ryan saw this message and it was uncertain whether he would, it might hurt her chances of reconciliation more than help them. Ryan seemed to be in a fragile emotional state. He nearly broke down whenever the kids were mentioned. The weight of what he'd experienced was piling up. Although Ryan was trying hard to move forward, he was clearly struggling, and this might not be beneficial for him. But Deanna was set on this path, so here they were. Jim aimed to keep her focused and to soften some parts that could be very painful. Deanna took a deep breath. She had been thinking about this for days, and now the moment had arrived. She felt nervous but determined. All right, let's start from the beginning. I met Jordan at his apartment downtown about 5 months ago. It was a typical staging job, a 2-bedroom place that honestly looked like a sports fan's hangout. There were baseball banners on the walls and sleek black furniture. I had seen places like it before, usually belonging to single guys. I knew what needed to be done, and Crystal and I were confident I could handle it. I scheduled a time with Jordan to look through the space, and honestly, there was an instant connection. I can't explain it, some people just have a charm that draws you in. Ryan had that effect on me the first time we met. Crystal was there, and I tried my best to stay professional and not get too close to him. When we finished, Crystal and I drove back to our office in Schaumburg, and it felt like we were both giddy. She said to me, "Wow, he's a looker. He couldn't take his eyes off you." I just turned red, and she laughed, saying, "Oh man, Supermom has a crush. What will you tell Ryan? New story at 10. I think I replied with something like, "Come on, Crystal." Either way, she noticed it too, so it wasn't just me. Anyway, we had the actual staging to do, and I arranged for that to happen. Crystal was supposed to help me, and typically I would have access to the apartment alone. However, when I arrived, Jordan was already there. Crystal had canceled at the last moment. I suspect she got distracted by a client. Can I stop you there for a moment, Deanna? Can we talk about that briefly? You mentioned Crystal might have been with a client. What was your understanding of her lifestyle? Oh, she was quite bold. That's the best way to put it. She enjoyed romance and the excitement that came with meeting new people, whether they were pursuing her or she was pursuing them. She appreciated the thrill of it all and sometimes used it to her advantage at work. It wasn't because she was trying to be someone she wasn't, it was just her nature. I admired how she could keep her love for her husband Charlie completely separate from her work life. It was impressive how she could switch between being very friendly and genuinely interested in one person and then be flirtatious with someone else. It was fascinating to see such a contrast to who I am. You have to be pretty confident to be able to do that, don't you? Well, we aren't here to defend Crystal's choices, Deanna. I know. I understand what she was doing wasn't right, but it was captivating to see how she managed it all. She found her way in life and seemed so confident in her choices. In the end, she got away with it. Even Ryan didn't bring her down. After everything changed for me, we had a heart-to-heart conversation. She mentioned that she had thought about her choices and talked about what we had been up to. I was completely puzzled because it was the opposite of how she had been acting and had gotten away with it quite well. I realized later that Ryan had influenced her, and much of what she shared with me had come from him. At that moment, I didn't see it. The main point is that she did things I could never imagine doing. Being around her was eye-opening. I didn't agree with her actions, but it was interesting. It felt so different from my life and the things I was facing. We will come back to that later. Let's return to the timeline. Okay. So, on the day I went to rearrange furniture, taking some of his things to his storage unit in the building, he was there. I tried my best to focus on the task and not react. But once I finished, he offered me a drink. I accepted, and then he made another suggestion. We didn't even kiss first. He simply said, "You're attractive. Want to?" And suddenly, I was in his room acting on it without thinking. There wasn't any flirting or persuasion, he just asked, and I went along with it. Let's discuss that, Deanna. Why do you think you acted that way? Why were you so quick to agree? I'm still figuring that out. Maybe I should give you a bit of background on how I felt at that time. It doesn't excuse my actions, but perhaps it will help you understand. I was a devoted mom, and I loved that role. I chose it and was content. I wouldn't trade Ryan or the kids or anything else for the world. But life has its mundane parts, you know? It can be full of little frustrations. Cooking dinner, managing fights between the kids, listening to yet another episode of their favorite show, making sure they got to their dentist appointments, and keeping track of household tasks. I chose this path, yet it doesn't mean I enjoy every single detail of it. Deanna paused for a moment and took a sip of water. Then she continued. It can feel like a constant low-level annoyance, if I'm honest. I know it sounds bad. There are plenty of wonderful moments with my family, often when I least expect them, but the everyday routine can be exhausting. I know Ryan felt similar, but we coped in different ways. There were days when I just wanted to scream. Without my job, I probably would have. We all need a special place that belongs only to us. I didn't have that. I think Ryan did, but honestly, I'm not sure. We were in a close relationship for years and knew each other well, but life with 3 kids in the 21st century wore us both down. Is that why you think you were so easily tempted? I don't know. Maybe. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision. Ryan wouldn't find out. This guy was attractive, there was chemistry, and my life felt tough. I thought this could be my escape, my special place. You didn't think about the line you were crossing? The hurt you were causing? Deanna looked a bit irritated. Of course not. If I had been thinking about the consequences, I wouldn't have done it. Jim realized it might have been a somewhat naive question, but he asked it to prove that Deanna wasn't considering home at all. He knew Ryan had felt the same way, and it was important that Ryan knew Deanna recognized that now. After a moment, Deanna continued, I see now that I should have spoken to Ryan. I didn't realize how overwhelmed I was. I noticed it in the back of my mind, but not clearly. I thought Ryan felt just as overwhelmed as I did. If I told someone my life was hard, it wouldn't help if they were struggling too. It would just become a contest of whose life was worse, and nothing would change. In hindsight, things are clear. I didn't see how my thoughts would influence my values at that moment. It's hard to stop something when you don't even see it coming. That sounds like an excuse, Deanna. Her eyes narrowed. No, it's not. I'm trying to share my thoughts. I'm not saying I was right. I just want you to understand what I was thinking. I know that being with someone else isn't the solution, but at the time, I was feeling sorry for myself when this attractive younger man showed interest. I thought it could be my chance to feel different, and if it didn't work out, no one would ever find out. It was just a situation that felt right. Jim stayed quiet, thinking. Well, we ended up together. That's the truth. It was good. Not amazing, but better than what I had recently. It's hard to explain. I know I have to do this, but it's tough. I feel like I'm hurting Ryan even more by being honest, but I need to be true to myself. Ryan and I had a decent relationship. It wasn't very frequent. I wished it happened more often, and I think he did too, but when it did, it was nice. At the beginning of our marriage, we tried different things, but as time went on, you know how it goes. When we finally had a moment, we were both often tired. We still cared for each other, but the chances weren't as many, and it seemed to fade a bit. I don't believe Jordan was better than Ryan or anything like that. To be honest, I barely paid attention to those details. It was more about the excitement. It was unexpected, thrilling, and it just felt good. Deanna stopped, shaking a little. Jim looked at her, curious. Honestly, unless there's a big difference, most women don't focus on those kinds of details. It really doesn't matter if one is a bit larger or smaller. What matters is the connection and experience. After it happened, we were both just lying there, and I didn't feel guilty. I thought I should check the time so I could get back home to pick up the kids from school. It was as if it had occurred, and I needed to protect myself from any trouble that might come from it. I felt almost no guilt. At least not then. I just got up to shower, and Jordan cracked jokes. It sounds silly now, but it helped me relax. They were so simple. I remember one, how do you communicate with a fish? The answer was drop it a line. I know, it's funny, but it worked. I laughed and felt better. After I showered, Jordan offered me some water and we talked. There wasn't that usual awkwardness you feel after a first encounter, you know? I don't know if it was me or him, but it felt easy. He made me laugh and he didn't act possessive or controlling. I was just there. Then I went home, and that's when the guilt set in. What felt strange was not that I had been with someone else. I know how simple those moments can be. It was more about the fact that I had met someone I liked, and Ryan and the family didn't have anything to do with that. It was like I needed something just for myself, but I felt really torn about it. Of course, I promised myself I wouldn't do it again, like many people do after their first time. And I meant to keep that promise. But life doesn't always go as planned, does it? I thought Ryan would notice, so I tried to stay away from him while still being a loving wife. Have you ever tried to manage that? It's impossible. I tried to make things right with Ryan that night. I cooked him his favorite dinner, and even though we didn't get intimate, I wasn't going to put him in an awkward position, and I couldn't let him find out about my day. We did share a tender moment the next night. I felt such relief in his arms afterward, knowing that our connection was still strong and I hadn't ruined my marriage. I had worried that I might want Jordan more, but Ryan proved to be just as special to me. I remember lying there, eyes closed, listening to his heartbeat, thinking of home, the kids, and all the reasons I loved my life with Ryan. And yet you went back? Of course. Jordan called a few times with excuses to see me. He complained about the new couch I bought, saying it wasn't comfortable. It was obvious, but since it was my job, I went to meet him. I tried to take Crystal with me, but she was busy. When I arrived, Jordan's idea of proving the couch was uncomfortable was to take me by surprise. I didn't put up much of a fight. Deanna gave a small, sad smile. I got some scratches on my thighs. I wore long skirts and pants for days until they healed. I have no idea how Ryan didn't notice. And that started everything? I think so. Something changed in me that day. I stopped resisting Jordan and accepted what was happening. On the way home, I decided to keep things separate like I saw Crystal do. I made some rules for myself. Jordan would never get more from me than Ryan would. For every time I saw Jordan, I would make sure to spend the same amount of time with Ryan. I wouldn't bring anything from my encounters home. I wouldn't share anything about my home life with Jordan. No comparisons allowed. If he ever said anything negative about Ryan or my family, I would leave immediately. I would keep my lives separate. No phone calls. If he called while I was at home, I would ignore it. Everything would happen away from my home, and I thought it would only last a few weeks before the excitement faded, so I could return to my normal life holding on to those memories. After the second time before I left, Jordan and I went out for coffee. He shared that he was married and had been feeling lonely while in Chicago for a year. I had caught his eye, and there was a spark. He looked straight at me and assured me that it would never be more than a fleeting connection. He loved his wife and wouldn't leave her for me, nor did he want me to feel that way. This was entertaining, but I knew it couldn't be anything more. He would be moving back to Philadelphia later this year, and that would be the end of it. He kept saying he was not a threat to my marriage. What we had was just fun and excitement, nothing deeper. Deanna shrugged. It all sounded fine to me. I didn't want to get caught up in feelings I couldn't manage. But I did like him. I have to admit that. He was easy to talk to, nice to look at, and funny. I didn't realize until later that what I liked about him reminded me of Ryan when we first met. When I realized that, things started to get confusing for me. Jim gently interrupted. We will get back to that, Deanna. Let's keep going with the story. So we met once or twice a week when I was in town. He took me to a baseball game at Wrigley Field. It was enjoyable. About 2 weeks in, Crystal took me to lunch, sat me down, and asked directly what I was doing with Jordan. I was surprised. If she knew, I must have been much less careful than I thought. We had lunch together, and I decided to tell her. If anyone would understand, it would be Crystal. She just sat there shocked. She said something like, I thought you were Mr. Perfect, and I answered something silly like, not today. But she figured it out. She gave me some advice on keeping it hidden from Ryan, like turning off my phone and always having a plan for when I was with Jordan. Honestly, she could write a book about how to keep secrets. One thing I remember is she looked at me and asked, "Is Ryan really that bad that you need this guy?" I mean, I always thought Ryan was kind of dull, but I didn't think he was that bad. Is he that poor at intimacy? I really had to defend him, saying that no, he was great. My life was good. I just needed something different. I liked Jordan. She made several comments about remembering that it was just fun, not love, and I waved her off. Anyway, I carried on. I found that I could keep things separate in my life. It felt like I was two different people. I was one person with Jordan and the wife and mother I had always been at home. Being that person at home was much easier. Knowing I had this other part, this secret that was just mine, felt like something was missing was finally filled. I could be everything I had always been and be happy with it. It's funny, but having this made me really appreciate what I had at home. Looking back, it seems strange because what I was doing could ruin everything. Yet at the time I kept thinking, I wonder how long this will go on. Finally, I have what I need. I didn't even think about what that really meant, how it reflected where I was mentally and what I believed I needed. I just remember feeling grateful for Ryan, how wonderful he was as a father, his gentle humor, and how much he loved me. I remember thinking that I needed to do more to show my appreciation. I tried a few times by buying him a gift or something, but it never felt quite right. When Jordan left, I thought I should take Ryan on a vacation, just the two of us. I wanted him to connect with me the way I was trying to connect with him. She took another sip. Looking back, it seems a bit silly, but that's how I felt back then. So, how did things change? It was an accident. One evening, we went out for dinner. Jordan had successfully completed a big work project, and I had a free night. Crystal had covered for us, so we headed out. He took me to the 95th floor of the Hancock Tower in downtown. I was wearing one of Crystal's dresses, which I had borrowed. It was hard to plan outfits for these outings without bringing extra clothes. I thought it was safer in case pictures got out. But anyway, we enjoyed ourselves and had a bottle and a half of champagne. I was feeling pretty good when I said I needed to go to the restroom. The waiter had mentioned the view, so I went to check it out. When I came out, Jordan was waiting for me. He wanted to see the view and asked me if I could sneak him in. I wasn't thinking clearly, so I said yes, and we went in together. He took a quick look outside and then kissed me, and it felt almost electric. I had never experienced anything like that. I felt alive in a way I never had before. We ended up in one of the stalls, and things got carried away. It was surprising because he didn't do anything different, but I felt out of control. I was so distracted that he had to cover my mouth to keep me quiet. At one point, someone walked in while we were there, and we had to stop. I was aware of someone outside just doing their makeup while I was caught up in what was happening. It was a feeling I had never had before. Afterward, we cleaned up and went back to our seats. That was a little uncomfortable. The waiter thought we had left without paying. He looked surprised when he saw us again, and I think he had an idea of what had just occurred since we had both disappeared at the same time. I was definitely feeling a bit embarrassed. We paid the bill, left, and didn't talk about it for a while. And that was the beginning of a new chapter for me. I had no idea that side of me existed. I wouldn't have tried anything like that with Ryan. It wouldn't have even crossed my mind. I don't mean to criticize, but my relationship with Jordan was quite different. The time I shared with Jordan was just for us, no kids, no little things to worry about, and no friends around, just the two of us. It felt like the best time I could have. We had a good connection, and sometimes we tried adventurous things. Considering my life so far, who wouldn't want that? It was my escape back then. That's how I saw it. I remained the same person at home. I was careful not to let my time with Jordan affect my family life. It may sound odd, but I appreciated the moments I had with Jordan. I didn't want to hold any bitterness towards my family, so I made sure to act as I should at home. It wasn't just to hide things. I truly loved my family and the people in it. Being with Jordan was my way of relaxing. I think the excitement kept the affair going longer than it might have otherwise. Once I realized my own needs, I wanted them fulfilled, and Jordan helped with that. Were there other examples of risky situations? Oh yes. We once found ourselves in a glass elevator, which felt even more daring. I had planned that moment, wearing a short skirt and heels that made me the right height for Jordan. We also had moments in the bathrooms at Wrigley Field. During a game, Jordan would touch my back, which really got me excited. We explored my car in the parking lot of a pizzeria downtown. We even shared a moment in another apartment I had set up. And there was a time on the balcony of a hotel on Michigan Avenue. Deanna shrugged. I lost control. I don't know how else to describe it. And did you ever think about talking to your husband about these new feelings? And say what? Hey, honey, I just found out I enjoy some excitement and adventure. How could I have brought that up without causing a huge problem? Ryan isn't naive. He'd see right through it if I suddenly acted different. How could I have realized these feelings without experiencing them first? No, I couldn't bring it up. Plus, that just wasn't the nature of my relationship with him. He was my husband, not someone I wanted to experiment with. I simply didn't see Ryan that way. Again, this is on me, not him. From our discussions, I think you're right that the affair changed how I viewed Ryan, and I couldn't see him that way anymore since Jordan was fulfilling that need. I also came to understand that some of my excuses, thinking I could bring the exciting moments with Jordan back home, would not really work. I remember thinking that at that moment, I didn't care. I was worried about what would happen when Jordan left and I had to go back to my normal life. I was scared I would just find someone else to fill the gap. I might have been in a tough place then, but I knew that if that happened, I wouldn't be able to keep being Ryan's wife. I couldn't do that. So I closed my eyes and decided to enjoy the time I had with Jordan as much as I could before he left. We've talked about this. You often create reasons to support your decisions, but it seems like you work backward. Instead of looking at all the facts and then making a choice, you seem to start with the decision you want and fit the facts around it, Jim said calmly. Deanna looked at him, weighing something in her mind. You know it's true. You're smart enough to get away with it because your justifications are so convincing. You can make anything seem reasonable, and when those reasons fall apart, you pretend it's not happening, as if you can't hear anything else. This is a classic example. They fell into silence for a moment, then Deanna said, Well, I guess I see that now. I'm just not sure what to do about it. Right now, there's nothing you can do. Just recognizing the behavior is the first step, believing in what you're capable of, even if it doesn't match how you see yourself. We can come up with strategies later. But for now, let's get back to it. What about that other thing? Well, I was looking for a thrill. Jordan and I had tried everything else. I had some plans for Ryan to be first. I was ready, but then he came home drunk and I was upset. I didn't realize it was a setup. I don't think he did either. And then just 2 days later, well, you know what happened. How did you feel when Ryan came back from Madison? I was scared. The big screen moment at Wrigley Field was exciting for us, at least for me. Jordan was worried about it, though. It felt like a really risky thing to do. I wasn't foolish. I knew how risky it was. I talked to Crystal about it and tried to laugh it off with her, but sometimes these things can get out of hand. Honestly, I didn't think Ryan would see it. He and his friends were not into sports, and we had no idea it was on national TV. Looking back, I realized it was part of my denial about how it would affect my home life. I didn't think he had noticed because I really wanted to believe he hadn't. Then he returned home from Wisconsin, and I was anxiously waiting for him to show anger or react in some way, but he just seemed unwell. How foolish was I? I was looking for a specific response while trying to hide that I was watching him, and in doing so, I overlooked another emotion he was feeling. I was so focused on seeing his pain that I completely missed that different things were happening that kept me away from him. I was just upset that I didn't have enough time with him to understand what he was thinking. When we talked that one time, 3 weeks after he told me to leave, I brought it up, and Ryan reminded me of the lie I had told him. I guess I deserved it. No, I truly did. I suppose that's the pride of someone who has been dishonest. I couldn't believe he could react to me the way I was reacting to him. What happened when it all fell apart? Deanna shifted in her seat and smoothed her long dress. After a moment, she looked up again. Jim noticed a tear on her cheek. We all know what happened. Ryan had somehow gotten his awkward friend, Solomon, to get into the screen at the game and display that message about us. We were at Wrigley Field. Ryan had called and asked me to come home. I didn't realize it was my last chance until later. I thought he was trying to assert himself. I was upset because I was having a good time with Jordan, and we had plans for some fun afterward. We even discussed going to Lincoln Park. When the screen flashed our faces, we laughed at first. But when Ryan's picture appeared, Jordan became furious. He recognized Ryan, and when the picture of his wife came up, he lost it. He shouted at the screen, and when the message, "They are cheaters," appeared, he stood up and left. I just sat there, crying. At that moment, I knew what had happened. I realized that Ryan knew everything. I could see how things would unfold from then on, and I was right. I cried for a bit, then called Ryan, but it went straight to voicemail. I called my sister Melissa to see if he was there, but he wasn't. My mind was all over the place then. I went to my car, and there she was, a young girl chewing gum standing by my vehicle. I recognized her. She asked if I was Deanna Tomlinson. She even had a picture of me, and when I said yes, she handed me an envelope and said, "You've been served." I sat in the car for about 30 minutes, going through the papers, a petition for divorce and a restraining order. I didn't fully understand all the legal terms, but I got the message. I was so upset that the first thing I did was drive home to try and talk to Ryan. I had a restraining order in my hand, and the first thing I did was break it to try and reach Ryan. The problem was, I didn't know what I would say to him. I realized that no words like, "It isn't what it looks like," or "It's just not true," would convince him. Deep down, I just felt I had to be home. If I was home with the kids and Ryan, I thought I would be safe. So, I drove back. When I arrived, I couldn't get in. My keys wouldn't work, and the garage door was stuck. I noticed Melissa's car outside, so I knew she was there. I hurried to the windows, trying to peek inside, and I knocked loudly, hoping Ryan would talk to me. I was sure he was there. Finally, Melissa stepped outside. She was not happy at all. She knew what I had done, and she was very upset. She told me I would have to leave because Ryan had a restraining order. If he wanted to, I could end up spending the night in jail. Feeling desperate, I pushed her aside and went around to the back of the house, hoping to find Ryan. But he either didn't notice me or chose not to respond. Melissa came around and grabbed me, letting me know the kids were inside, and I wouldn't want them to see me in this state. We went to the garage and she opened the door. I rushed in, but the door to the house was locked. Most of my belongings were in garbage bags in the garage. Melissa loaded them into her car and practically marched me to her car, locking me in. Then we drove to her place, where she gave me something to help me sleep, and I ended up resting for 3 days. After that, I lost my job to Crystal. I couldn't blame her, even though it stung to take advice from someone who had cheated for years. She suddenly acted like she had high standards, someone I thought would understand my situation, instead gave me a lecture on trust and communication, and told me to remove my things from the apartments. I didn't dare go near Jordan's apartment. Later I learned that Crystal had also been there and took what she knew belonged to me. I kept trying to reach out to Ryan, ignoring the restraining order. I didn't show up physically, but I sent emails, texts, and made phone calls, anything to connect without being there in person. It was strange. I still couldn't figure out what to say. I just needed to hear his voice. I wanted to talk to him to understand what he was thinking and what my life would look like moving forward. I planned to apologize, but I wanted to know if there was any chance for things to go back to normal, if there was still hope for us. I was in shock and not really thinking clearly. I finally got to see Ryan one more time 3 weeks later when he agreed to meet with me. I tried to say things that mattered, to explain that nothing was his fault. He looked rough. He really did. I felt really down and sad, and it was all my fault. He was upset and made sarcastic comments. I could tell that what had happened between us affected him just as much as it did me. But in my mind, I deserved it while he didn't. I cried for a long time after our meeting, sitting in the parking lot of Red Robin. I had an idea of how he was feeling, but hearing it for real hit me hard. It still does. Have you heard from Jordan since? Just once, right after Crystal fired me. He called to yell at me. His wife had received a video of us and some footage from a game at Wrigley Field. He was really angry, and I understood why, but he was especially upset with Ryan. He said Ryan had been in his apartment pretending to be a buyer and recognized him right away. I remember saying that if that was true, Jordan was lucky because I would have expected Ryan to react badly. It seemed to be just curiosity for Ryan. Somehow he must have captured it. It came up in the divorce hearings, but I never saw it and didn't want to. I worried about what I might have said. We talked about things that added to the tension, but we didn't really mean it. I know I told Jordan at one point that I was thinking of him while being with Ryan. And were you? There was a moment of silence. I did once, and it ruined that time with Ryan for me. I had to pretend everything was fine because that guilt almost took over me. Right then, I realized I needed to keep my thoughts about Jordan pushed away. I couldn't even think about what we did together, or else I would break down. Being with Ryan while thinking of Jordan just couldn't happen again. I know it sounds selfish, but I wanted to focus on being with Ryan and feeling the love and safety he offered. You're right. It does sound a bit self-centered. I know, but that's how I felt in that moment. Whether others believe me, I can't change that. I'm not sure Ryan believes me either. I can only share what I was thinking and feeling back then. What's worse is that Ryan confronted me about this when we last met, and I said I didn't know. I didn't know how to respond or what he wanted me to say. I should have told him that Jordan was not important and that I just wanted to be with him. But I said something foolish. Again, I was confused and scared. Do you have anything else to say about your time with Jordan? Not really. There was talk about a recording my lawyer listened to it, and I heard a part before I had to leave the room because it made me feel so sick. At one point, Jordan seemed to suggest I was like a prize to be given to the next person, Ryan in this case. I'm not sure how serious he was. That's not something you joke about, but I just don't get it. Jordan and I got close because of the chemistry we shared, not because I was looking for someone else. I wouldn't have moved on to someone new, and I think Jordan understood that too. I really don't understand why he would say something like that. He must have known it wouldn't happen. Honestly, it hurt a lot to be treated that way, even if it was a joke. It's degrading to be seen as someone who can just be passed along to another person. It feels bad and shows a lack of respect, but at this point, I feel like I brought it on myself. I was acting foolishly, and I guess he treated me that way. Just one more hurt to add to the pile I was already dealing with. I will say this, though. I did enjoy my time with Jordan. It was wrong, but he was nice and never harmed me until I heard about that recording. He helped me discover a part of myself that I never would have found otherwise. I'm not sure if that's a good thing, but I can't ignore it now. I just want to make sure I don't dwell on it too much. I know that spending time with Jordan was wrong, yet it didn't change how I feel for Ryan and the kids for my family. Instead, it confirmed to me that I truly want and need what I had. I know it sounds silly given my choices back then, but it's how I feel. I wouldn't answer a call from him now, though. Not because I dislike him, he just took advantage of a confused woman, but because I don't want to go through all this again. I have no interest in him at all. That's easy to say, though. There was a moment of silence, then Jim asked, "Have you stayed in touch with the kids? How are they doing with everything?" Deanna smiled at that. She lit up every time she talked about her children. Her love for her family was clear and always close to the surface. It was something Ryan couldn't see when they spoke, which wasn't surprising given how hurt both had been by what happened. Well, Paula has figured out a lot of what happened. She's no fool. She's really angry at me, and our talks are mostly very short. The other two are just puzzled about why I'm not home anymore, but there is still love in our family. It's different now, and it doesn't feel right. They're changing and becoming more serious. You can see it in how they view things. Paula especially seems more down about the world now. I am unsure how to handle this. I keep trying to reach her, but she doesn't seem interested. I attempt to send messages to Ryan through Melissa since they talk sometimes when she picks up the kids. However, I'm not sure if my messages are getting through. This was the first time Jim had heard this, and he decided to call Ryan himself. It needed to be talked about. What about Ryan? He came here 3 times, but he made it clear he wasn't looking to fix things. He said he just wanted to share his side of the story to help you see why things happened. From what I gather, he seems just as unhappy as I am. He's been spending more time with Jonathan Brody, someone he met through an old girlfriend from college. Jonathan is also his company's lawyer. Angie, Jonathan's wife, is my friend, but she's been keeping her distance lately. I think she lost respect for me, and I understand why. I know his friends Simon and Jonathan are trying to persuade him to take a trip to Vegas for a weekend, but that's just not Ryan. I believe he's struggling. I think he feels defeated, and I think I'm partly to blame. I feel terrible for him and want to help. I can't just stay at home and feel sorry for myself. I worry on one hand that he won't move on, and on the other that he will. I think this situation has hurt him deeply, and it might change how he sees himself. It feels like he's lost his confidence. and that he might be having doubts about his ability to make me happy. Jim made another note. Deanna had shown before that when she looked beyond herself, she could be very aware of what was happening. He believed everything she was saying because he had seen similar signs in Ryan. And nothing could be further from the truth. I tried to explain this to him when we met, but I don't think he understood. Ryan is full of warmth and kindness. He is protective and represents many wonderful qualities. I lost sight of how valuable that is, but I realize it now. The issue was not his fault. I can't see how he could have done anything to change this. I'm the one who failed, not him. The divorce is understandable. I don't want it, and I hold on to hope that he might change his mind, but I won't stop him. If this is what Ryan needs to find peace, then that's what he must do. I just hope I can keep his last name. Not sharing the same name as my kids, not having his name will be very hard for me. I know it's different from what I did, but in my way it feels just as painful. In the end, it all hurts. And then I worry he will truly move on. If he does that, I have no chance. I don't think I could handle it. There was a pause as Deanna stared at her hands. She looked small and delicate. So, you've thought about all the feelings and reasons you had in the past. What do you think now, Deanna? The situation has changed, and everyone has moved on. What are your thoughts about what happened now? Deanna glanced around the room, searching for something. This is the hardest part, facing yourself, admitting who you were and who you are. I feel so ashamed. I dislike that person I used to be and the thoughts I allowed myself to believe. Sometimes I have to separate myself from that past version, because otherwise it hurts too much. That I could act the way I did, then come home and pretend everything was fine. What kind of person does that? I mean, I was so blind to the truth. The excuses I made were just ridiculous. Take a moment, Deanna, Jim said, leaning in and touching her arm gently. Deanna smiled at him gratefully and covered his hand with her own. It's okay. I'm okay. I'm just so upset. How could I be that person? It took me, 8 weeks to really accept it? How could I not see it? How twisted was my thinking? I finally realized what I have done, and all I see is the mess I've created in my life and my family with my husband who only wanted to love me. It's enough to make anyone feel terrible. The disrespect I showed is hard to understand. You've helped me see that you can't treat someone like this without hurting them. I spent so much time telling myself I wasn't being unfair to him because I didn't give Jordan anything my husband didn't have. But all I was doing was pretending that everything was fine while my world was falling apart. I mean, we've talked about this. It wasn't really about disrespecting Ryan, but more about my unhappiness with my life. Jordan was my escape from responsibilities. Ryan just seemed to be in the way. But I can't treat someone I care about that way without disrespecting what we have, right? I can't think of anything he did or didn't do that would make me think, what a weak person, even unconsciously. Jim raised an eyebrow at her. Well, there must have been something, I guess. Maybe he was too agreeable with me. Maybe he wasn't strong enough. But at the end of the day, I loved him. No, I love him. It's real. I just can't make sense of it. Well, we still have more to talk about, Deanna. That's why I said this feels early. We haven't uncovered everything yet. I'm sure there are still issues we need to address. Deanna scoffed softly and continued. The truth is, my ability to ignore what I was doing and justify my actions frightens me. My own feelings about taking risks in relationships scare me. How I react to them feels just wrong. I did something without my husband and then spent a lot of time hiding my actions from him and my family. Deanna, your feelings about risky relationships are just part of who you are. It's not about being right or wrong. What matters is who you were with and what happened. That part isn't wrong, Jim said. I know, I'm just skipping over things. The truth is, I acted really badly. I hurt the people I love the most, and now I'm trying to fix everything and realizing that it might be impossible. My life may be stuck like this forever. What is your life like now? How are you managing? My life feels terrible. I have a dead-end job selling clothes at Ross. I live in a huge house that feels cold and empty, not like a real home. I have a sister who has been hurt by cheating, and now she looks at me like I'm out of touch. She's only helping me because we're family, not because she cares. My brothers won't talk to me at all. One even hung up on me during the holidays when I called to wish them well. Most of my friends avoid me, and I have unwanted attention from people looking to take advantage. I've become the subject of some cruel online jokes, and that really showed me how unkind people can be. I've tried dating twice, and both times were complete failures. I didn't even realize I was on a date until the guy told me how bad it was. I thought I was just helping out a coworker. The other date was an attempt to see if I could move on, and it didn't go well. He got angry when I left in the middle of dessert. I met with Crystal a few weeks ago. She wanted to catch up and see how I was doing. I think she feels like being with me could harm her reputation as well. She told me how her relationship ended because Ryan caught her with someone else, and that led to a lot of trouble. She was worried I would be mad at her, so she waited to talk to me again. Honestly, I'm just happy to have a friend to talk to, so I would forgive her anything. She's trying to make things work with Charlie. She even jokingly asked if I would consider a big arrangement with him, like that would ever happen. But it was nice to share some laughter together. She said she had to ask since she had no one else to turn to. It's frustrating that she was the one who cheated for years, and when she got caught, she seems to be fine. That was Ryan's punishment for her cheating to spend time with her husband often. Why couldn't someone have caught me and given me that punishment? I made a mistake once and it felt like my life was over. It's really not fair, but I can't complain too much since what I did to Ryan wasn't fair either. She mentioned she might help me with some staging work, but I said I didn't want to think about it. I'm considering starting a blog about interior design, like a guide on staging a house. I'm not sure. I'm just passing time, to be honest. I need something to do while I wait for the weekends. I'm really unhappy. I miss my kids and my life, and I look forward to the weekends when they visit. I want to find a way to talk to Ryan and let him know how I feel, what happened, that it's not his fault. This is the only way I can think to reach out. What do you want, Deanna? What message do you want to send Ryan? Jim asked as his final question. I just want him to know I love him. I can't express how sorry I am. Looking back, I can't believe I did it. It's so unlike me. I can't figure out why I went into the bedroom with Jordan instead of just confronting him directly. I think of different reasons, but it worries me that I don't really know why I acted that way. How can I expect Ryan to give me another chance if I can't even trust myself? But I'm not going to give up. That life, that husband, and that family are like air to me, and I'm not giving it up without a fight. I want it back. It will never be exactly the same, but neither am I. I've learned so much, and something new has to grow from this. But I want it with Ryan, more than anything, and I would do anything to have it. Deanna turned to the camera, looking straight into it, her lips trembling as she said, You hear that, Ryan? I'm coming for you. I told you I would. I need to get better and understand myself more, but I promise I will come for you. I want you. I need you. I love you, and I will find a way for us to be together, to move past this, to rebuild. I will do whatever it takes to earn your forgiveness and love again. Deanna seemed a bit restless, and Jim gently said, Okay, I think we've gone over everything you wanted, right, Deanna? She looked at Jim, fidgeting with her hands, and nodded. All right then, it's time to wrap this up. I turned off the TV and leaned back, taking a sip of the whiskey in my glass. The ice had melted, diluting the drink. I wasn't sure if I liked that or not. Maybe it's time to get some steel ice cubes or something instead. Oh look, more distracting thoughts. I was becoming better at noticing that. The truth is, I just didn't know what to think. Everything felt real enough, but as I told Jim the first time I met him, I just couldn't trust her anymore. If he had seen how calm Deanna was at home while everything else was happening, and how I liked to think everyone else had no idea what was going on, what would he expect? She seemed sorry, but she also acted like she was only with me, giving no hints that she wasn't. She was really good at keeping everything hidden. But Jim had another idea about that. He pointed out that maybe I really had no clue. He didn't say it directly, but it was clear. I didn't argue. He could be right for all I knew. If what she said was true, it helped fill in some gaps for me. Knowing the background changes how you see the main event a little, but still, knowing her reasons didn't take away the hurt of feeling betrayed. My ego was bruised just as much. It's hard to accept someone saying it wasn't your fault, it was me, because I just didn't believe it. Happy partners don't act in ways that hurt the other person. The biggest issue I faced, I realized, was that I wanted to believe her, that everything I saw was true. It would lighten my heart if it were. But I just couldn't. I don't know why. Maybe I was just trying to shield myself. It's hard to be sure after everything that had happened over the past weeks. I sat there playing with my iPhone for a bit, hoping the kids stayed upstairs. I needed some time alone. They had discovered a new kids show called Phineas and Ferb and were busy watching it non-stop. To me, it looked like a poorly drawn cartoon of kids with triangle heads. Where was the good old Tom and Jerry when you really needed it? Kids today. Not only won't they leave my yard, they won't help with the work either. I had another drink. I could get used to this. It was smoother than I expected. I'm not much of a whiskey drinker. Wait, this isn't whiskey, is it? It's Irish. I smiled. Solomon would have chuckled at that. Now that he had discovered the effects of alcohol, he was eager to try everything with his usual keen interest, and he even started a blog about his thoughts on everything he was sampling. He was gone now, of course. After our little adventure, once Paul realized what happened, the caretaker had been called back, and off he went somewhere else in the U.S. I did miss him, even though he could be a bit too close for comfort sometimes. I sat and fiddled with my iPhone again. I opened the email app. I closed it. I checked Facebook and made some rude comments on Simon's page. He and Polly had always been good friends to me. I felt lucky to have Simon in my life, but I still wanted to tease him online. I hadn't forgiven him for what Siri said about me. Polly had suggested setting me up on a date, but I wasn't interested at all. I had too much work to do and the kids needed my attention, especially since Paula didn't want to help with a challenging level in Halo 4. I just wasn't ready for anything like that. I knew I was considering something I shouldn't. I understood it would have consequences, but I had a couple of drinks, which I used as an excuse. With my hand shaking, I typed a short email. It said, "If you wanted to make things better, what would you do?" I sat there staring at the screen, unsure if I should press send or not. Then I had another drink and felt frustrated with Deanna, my life, everything, and most of all, myself. Hey everyone! Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the exciting stories we have coming up. What do you think about the characters in this story? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.